Superman the Animated Series. An animated series in the DC Animated Universe that I feel like is overlooked when compared to the rest of the DC Animated Universe shows. This is yet another show I loved as a kid and grew up with. But like last time with the Batman the Animated Series video, I want to watch over every episode in Superman the Animated Series and see how good this show actually is. Also, I appreciate you all so much for the support in the Batman the Animated Series video, as recently that video has gone nuts, and I love making that video even though it took me a full month to make, and that's when I wasn't working full time either. But without further ado, let's get into Superman the Animated Series. We're starting off with... Now, this show's intro is so underrated, even though it's just a clip show of the episodes from the show. The music actually slaps so damn hard. But here we are with the first episode of the animated series, and I find it interesting that we start with a three-parter. Also, damn, why aren't we getting cool stylized title cards like in the first season of Batman the Animated Series? Honestly, quite disappointing, as that's something that I loved from Batman the Animated Series. I guess this show came out just before Batman the Animated Series started doing the exact same thing, where they just have the title of the episode as the episode starts. Anywho, this whole episode takes place on Krypton, where we follow Jor-El as he figures out that Krypton's gonna blow up, but people don't believe his theory. Obviously it is gonna blow up, which leads to Jor-El sending baby Kal-El to Earth on a ship. Also, hell yeah, Paul Dini helped write this three-parter? I hope it's good. We see some faces that we're gonna see later in the series, such as Brainiac, where he uses Jor-El's ship as some kind of Hell 9000 stuff. Hell, we even see Krypto the Superdog in their home. It's a good start to the show by showing the viewers how Krypton blew up and that Brainiac lied to everyone to make them not believe Jor-El, and he did that just so he could save himself before the planet blew up. In hindsight, looking at this episode now, I think it's just kind of pointless. Everyone knows Superman's backstory, but I feel like maybe back when this show started, it wasn't as well known as it is now. One thing that's worth it with this episode is setting up Brainiac and how it can be a big potential threat later on. But it's an alright episode. It's nothing amazing, it just works for what it is and just setting up Krypton, and Krypton looks really nice too. Past Son of Krypton Part 2 obviously starts off where the first part ended, with Kal-El being in the ship on his way to Earth, where he lands in Kansas. The Kents see the ship land as they're out driving and find out that there's a baby in the ship as Martha grabs the baby, and John's hesitant at first but then accepts the baby. But then we follow Clark in high school after he aces a test, and he hears a car accident going on as he goes to rush and help the people out. After all that, John and Martha finally tell Clark that he's an alien, and they just tell him everything he knows, and basically that's just that he came from a ship. But after activating a device on the ship, Jor-El and Kara tell him that he's a Kryptonian and that his powers come from Earth's yellow sun. After finding that out, he runs off and finds out that he can actually fly. It then shows Metropolis as some person dressed up as a superhero saves a girl from falling out of a building, which would obviously be Clark. But then we see Lois Lane at the Daily Planet, where Clark has his first day at the Daily Planet. Their first job together is at a LexCorp event where LexCorp is showing off new military tech. This is where we get to see the best voice for Lex. Yes, it's Mr. Krabs himself, Clancy Brown. But at this point, he doesn't quite have the iconic Lex voice that he gets later on. But as Lex comes out, people break in and steal the military tech as Clark suits up and starts to fight them, as the episode ends with one of the missiles hitting the plane. It's similar to the first episode in regards to setting up this universe, and especially this universe's Clark Kent, and how he ends up deciding to become Superman. Still a solid episode, but let me say that the cast are great as their voices, such as Tim Daly as Clark and Dana Delaney as Lois Lane. As I said before, Clancy Brown as Lex Luthor, even though he isn't quite into the role yet. This is better than the first part though, as we actually get to see a bit of Superman in the show. So we pick up from the end of the last episode as Superman has to save a plane from crashing into Metropolis. He manages to pull it off and lands a plane on a nature strip just outside of a zoo as someone manages to record Superman as he's flying off. But after that, Perry White is trying to get to the bottom of who this character is, and as they're looking at the footage of Superman flying away, I honestly really like this joke.
Nice S.
Excuse me?
Right here.
But after that, they decide that this man should be called Superman because of the S on his chest. So then Clark suits up again and then lets Lois talk to Superman as he tells Lois that he's out to help people. But Clark then goes with Lois to chat to Lex about the suit, as Clark is suspicious about the attack where the group stole the military tech from LexCorp. I will say, I was extremely surprised to hear Malcolm McDowell as the captain, John Corbin, of this ship, as Lois is investigating it. But John pulls a gun on her and holds her hostage as she found the military tech on the ship. And of course, Superman comes and saves her. As all about to get away, John gets the military tech suit to fight Superman. I will say, the animation in this fight scene is really fucking good, and it goes much harder than it needs to, but of course, Superman ends up defeating him and hands him into the authorities. After that, Superman then pays Lex a visit, as Lex explains that he runs a whole city with his tech, and all Superman says is that he will be watching over Lex. But as a surprise for the end of this episode, we get to see Brainiac attack an alien ship where he takes over it and then is headed towards Earth, with Brainiac becoming a threat to Superman. This episode is actually pretty good. There are a few small animation mistakes, but I like how it builds on Superman and how it took a bit of time for people to warm up to Superman and to see him as a good person that will protect them. But also seeing Superman and Lex's relationship start to develop is some neat stuff. This part was the best out of the three. Let's just see if this is all fun and games, hey? Funny joke. Anyways, the episode starts with a car chase as police are chasing down robbers and the cops can't catch up to them, so the robbers get away. When they get into the base, Toyman comes out and says that he's their new boss now, and as Toyman leaves, he leaves the ball behind as it destroys the factory that they're in, and they take cover in the car. Lucky for them, Superman comes in to save them just before the ball gets through the car, and as Superman gets rid of the ball, he lifts up the car with the robbers and hands them in to the police. After that, Lois and Clark are at an event where Toyman attacks with toy planes as they start shooting at them all. Clark then manages to sneak in a bit of laser vision to get rid of the planes whilst Lois and Jimmy aren't looking, and now Lois and Clark are investigating who this Toyman character is. The Toyman then shows up again to get the man he was after named Bruno, and as Superman's distracted with the giant rubber duck, Toyman gets the man he was after. Then the same night, Lois receives a gift where she gets knocked out by a toy doll that she was given as a gift, and it's revealed that the Toyman kidnapped her and dressed her up as a toy doll. So now Clark has to find out why Toyman was after Bruno, and he ends up finding out as Toyman tells Lois about his backstory where the toymaker wasn't making any money. So Bruno bought the place and used it as a front for his crime business, so the toymaker was arrested and then died in prison. But the toymaker had a son that ended up becoming the Toyman as he wanted vengeance for his father. Superman then arrives to save Lois and then ends up escaping with Lois and Bruno as the Toyman gets away. You know what? I expected Toyman to be a very basic and straightforward character, but I was wrong. I actually like the backstory of the character. It's a pretty solid episode, but it isn't anything particularly special. I gotta say, it's in between Last Son of Krypton Part 3 and Part 2. A little piece of home starts with Lex talking about a new museum that he's opening, as Clark can see that someone's breaking in, so he suits up to take them down. As he does, he starts to not feel well as some particular glowing rocks are sitting behind him. Lex finds out that they weaken Superman, so he wants to weaponize the rock to control Superman. Lois and Clark quickly find out what those rocks were, as Lois had someone inside LexCorp give her a bit of the rock and tell her that they're using it against Superman. Lex then sets up a crime where he hires thugs for a crime to bait Superman to a spot where he wants to test the kryptonite on Superman to see how much it weakens him. After Superman falls for Lex's bait, he ends up giving Lex a visit, and honestly, seeing Lex stand up to Superman like this is cold as fuck, but it's such a great scene where Lex thinks he has so much power on him because he can weaken Superman. But Lois took the sample to Star Labs, so they find out that lead can actually stop the effects of kryptonite. So after that, Lois and Superman go into the museum where Superman has to fight a fucking T-Rex. But first they had to get the kryptonite and put it in a lead cup sitting in the room with him so Superman will get his power back. So obviously after that, Superman beats the T-Rex and they escape. This is yet another solid episode. I really like how Lex just found out by mistake that Superman's weakened by kryptonite, because he would have found it somewhere on the planet and then just used it as a museum piece and then find out that it weakened Superman was pretty cool. And then obviously seeing Lex trying to weaponize it against Superman is great. But I will say it isn't the best episode, and obviously seeing more of Lex and Superman is great. So I gotta put this just below The Last Son of Krypton Part 3. Feeding time starts with Superman testing a new suit that will be used to combat the effects of kryptonite, and it seems to work perfectly. But as that's going on, robbers are trying to rob Star Labs as Superman's in the lab testing the suit, so Superman comes to get them, but first he has to save the security guards as the loading dock is on fire. As the robbers are getting away, one of them in the back named Rudy has the toxic chemicals spill all over them, and honestly there's some pretty disturbing imagery here which looks really fucking cool. Rudy ends up falling out of the ute and is left there for dead, and as he's left there he ends up coming alive after grabbing a mouse. A cop ends up finding him walking as he seems to suck the life out of the cop and imitates her voice to make the cops not suspicious about what's going on. Rudy ends up sucking the power out of the other robber as Superman comes to try and stop him, but Rudy then tries to suck the power out of Superman. After a bit of time, the victims have realised that they start to feel better after about a day as the effects are only temporary, but Rudy discovers that himself, so he decides to take Superman as a hostage so he can keep sucking the power out of him. After a week of no Superman or Clark, Jimmy out of anyone then decides that something suspicious might be going on at Star Labs, so then he goes to investigate by stealing a press badge and then he finds Superman chained up. Jimmy ends up getting Superman out and then Superman ends up beating Rudy by putting the suit on at the start of the episode by making him grab the kryptonite in the same room, making him powerless. My question now is, are all of the episodes of the first season just going to be consistently solid? They are all episodes that aren't amazing but are still good episodes. But if I have to put this episode somewhere, it's probably between Last Son of Krypton Part 2 and Part 1. Hey yo, John Corbin's back? Hell yeah, but it starts with him in prison as he seems to have a lot with him in prison where he has a heart attack. Apparently he has some kind of rare virus where John needs to find some kind of medication or cure for his unknown disease. After that, the prison's attacked with missiles as Superman stops one of the missiles and ends up taking the prisoners that tried to escape back to prison. But John manages to actually escape without Superman catching him, as he then goes to Lex for a cure for his virus. But with that, he gets turned into Metallo. Lex does this by putting John's conscience in the metal robot and his skin onto the robot, and also has a kryptonite in his chest. He then goes all Omni-Man on this train and just keeps on wreaking havoc until Superman comes to fight him. Obviously, John uses the kryptonite on him, but Superman ends up getting away after hitting John with Lois's car. But John ends up going back to LexCorp to try and fix him because he can't feel anything. But John ends up accepting that he's just Metallo, where he ends up confronting Lex about how he can't feel anything, and as that's going on, Superman comes to stop them, but he gets his ass kicked. Superman then ends up telling John the truth about how Lex gave him the disease intentionally to make him become Metallo. So as John's confronting Lex, Superman blows up the boat and John sinks to the bottom as Superman saves Lex. The episode ends with John at the bottom of the ocean as he's walking. I fuck with this episode quite a lot. Seeing John Corbin back is great, and seeing him become Metallo is very cool as well. There isn't really anything too special about these episodes, besides from that, I really think that this is the best episode yet. I will say, I wish there was a little more done with the fact that John ended up basically becoming non-human after turning into Metallo. Stolen Memory starts off with one of Lex's experiments going on in the desert as Lois and Jimmy are undercover trying to find out what Lex is up to. As their experiment's going on, we see a ship come out of nowhere as Brainiac shows up to talk to Lex, as Lex gives Brainiac a disc with the basic knowledge of Earth. And as that's going on, Superman's coming back from a space mission and he finds out that Lex has made a friend. We then see the Pentagon talk to Lex about Brainiac as Lex shows off a little bit of Brainiac's tech, while Lex wants to use his tech for his own benefit, but Lex then comes up with a great idea for Superman to chat to Brainiac. Superman agrees, but as he goes to meet Brainiac on the ship, he gets attacked by a few robots. But after Superman gets rid of most of the robots, Brainiac then talks to Superman and shows how he's collected information from many different planets across the universe. After Brainiac shows Superman a glimpse of Krypton, Brainiac then offers Superman to join him where Superman can have the universe. Clark thinks about it as he's trying to sleep, but Clark has a vision where he sees Brainiac actually did the first part of the last lot of Krypton, and that he actually caused all the Kryptonians to die, which ended up actually being a dream as Clark wakes up from the dream. Superman then tells Lex about this, where Lex confirms to Superman that he was already suspicious about Brainiac and has set up 6.4 megatons of explosives aimed at Brainiac's ship if Brainiac ends up trying to do something. So Superman then goes back to Brainiac, where we see that Brainiac's linking up with LexCorp Tower after Lex says that he's ready. As Brainiac's doing a data transfer, Superman looks at the data orbs of some of the planets to see that Brainiac is wiping out all the planets as he takes all their information. As this is going on, Brainiac overwrites LexCorp Tower and Superman then fights Brainiac. He manages to unplug Brainiac as Lex sets off the explosives and Superman punches a hole through Brainiac and then leaves as the ship's going down. The episode then ends with Superman hiding the data orb of Krypton in the North Pole. Damn, I gotta say this is a good episode. Honestly, my favorite so far. It still isn't anything super amazing, but this is a pretty good episode, so it's at the top. More episodes with Paul Dini writing them? I'm definitely keen about that. But the main man starts off with yet another experiment in the middle of the desert, but this is an experiment to do with the rocket's speed as it ends up breaking the sound barrier. We find out that Superman's in the rocket and it's the same rocket that took him from Krypton to Earth, but as that's going on we see that one of the best Superman characters ever, Lobo, played by Brad Garrett, as he's beating up people in a bar. But in the bar he's fighting other bounty hunters as they're all trying to fight each other to see who's taken a certain job. But Lobo leaves on his bike as his place blows up and ends up being transported into someone's ship, which ends up being a character named Preserver who wants Lobo for a job. Also, as Preserver's explaining the job to Lobo, we see a nice little hint to Starro being a potential villain, so I definitely hope that goes somewhere in the future. But Preserver tells Lobo that he wants him to kill Superman, and Lobo refuses at first but ends up being convinced as Preserver shows Lobo the reward for the job. Lobo then quickly shows up to Earth, and I love it how Clark just tells Lois that he's Superman, but she just thinks he's nuts and is just lying. But after Clark and Lois talk, Clark says that Lobo's wreaking havoc at the police station, so he suits up and goes to put a stop to Lobo. I really like Lobo as a character in this show, and he's just a wisecracker in the greatest way possible, because he's just an entertaining character to watch. But the fight goes on for a while, and it ends when Superman stops a rocket of Lobo's from hitting a train where Superman's wounded. But as Lobo's about to kick his ass, Lois tries to hurt Lobo but with no luck, but it gives Superman the time to get a jump on him when they fight again for a little. Lobo then manages to get away with his bike, but Superman takes the rocket into deep space to go and fight him. But Preserver then manages to hit Superman with a beam that knocks him out and puts Superman on display as the last Kryptonian. As Lobo is teasing Superman being on display, Preserver then knocks out Lobo and puts him on display as well, and that's how the first part ends. Honestly, this episode's very good. Just a fun episode start to finish. It also has lots of action, but I like that a lot. And Lobo is a standout character since he's very entertaining to watch, and I really enjoy seeing him in this episode. Best episode yet. So we start with the bounty hunters from the first part as they're talking to their boss. But we then go back to the museum as Superman wants to leave, but Lobo loves it until he realizes that he's trapped too and then gets knocked out by the two female robots. Superman then comes up with an idea to get out by using a light at a rhino to get it angry and break down the glass. Superman was going to leave Lobo in there, but ends up letting him out after he promises to leave Earth alone, and now they both have to team up to get out the ship. They deal with some of the defenses, but then they walk into a trap where they have to fight a giant alien snake thing. And I didn't expect Lobo to pull its skin off when grabbing the back of the snake thing. But as they get out of that, the bounty hunters from the start of the first part get on the ship and they try to hunt down Lobo and Superman. And obviously Superman and Lobo end up beating them as Superman gets his powers back from a room that has Earth's yellow sun. Lobo then gets to his bike as Preserver then transforms into a red beast that they have to fight, and Superman ends up catching up to help Lobo beat Preserver. We then see Lobo relaxing with the bounty hunter's boss as the episode ends with Superman going to the Fortress of Solitude, where he manages to get all of Preserver's collection into the fortress. Honestly, this episode isn't as good as the first part. I still quite enjoyed it, but it just isn't as good as the first part to me. So for me, it would have to be just below the last Son of Krypton Part 3. My Girl starts with the fashion show as we see Clark and Lois are there as Lex walks in with Clark's ex, Lena Lang, that we actually saw back in the last Son of Krypton Part 2. But Lena goes backstage to help the models and then she gets kidnapped by two ladies as Clark was about to go and see her. But Clark then suits up to help Lena and ends up saving her as the people who kidnapped her kicked her out of the elevator and Superman then manages to catch the kidnappers as well. And Lena knows that Clark is Superman as she's connected the dots from Smallville to know what he's doing as Superman. But the next day, Lena manages to hear Lex talking about an arms deal confirming what Superman told her the night before in her apartment. So Superman then manages to stop an arms deal as the thugs are playing with the arms that they're dealing with since it seems to be some future tech, but one of them shoots a train track where Superman then saves the train from derailing. But Superman then sees Lena, and then Lex sees from afar that she's kissing Superman, so he sets up a trap for Superman to go to Central City, as Lex picks up Lena in a limo to presumably kill her. But we see that Lena is taken to a lead factory where she'll be completely covered in lead, but Superman comes in time to save her, so Superman actually knew that Lena wasn't safe. Superman goes after the thug that kidnapped Lena, and they end up shooting the gun that causes all the lead to go everywhere, as now Superman has to save Lena again, and then save the thug before they drown in liquid lead. Superman gets out in time with them as the whole place blows up and the episode ends with Lena talking to Clark at the Deadly Planet as she says that she's gone to Paris. I don't know, but I think this is the weakest episode yet. It's quite average, and I honestly just find Lena to be an extremely annoying character that I don't like at all. The main thing that made it up for me is Lex and how he's hesitant on getting rid of Lena because he has feelings for her, but besides from that, this is the worst episode yet. So this episode starts with robbers trying to break into Metropolis's gold exchange with the tank, and police soon arrive to get their asses kicked by the tank. Superman then manages to make his way to the crime scene to get rid of the tank, and as that's going on, we see that Bruno from the episode Fun and Games orchestrated this. So Superman then makes quick work of the tank and then hands the thugs to the police. After that, we see Bruno being pissed off about what happened before, and as he's destroying stuff, a man named Kanto, played by Basil himself, Michael York, comes in offering them weapons that might actually help them against Superman. Bruno's confused as to why he's getting those gifts, and apparently it's just a free sample at the moment, but they might have to do something for him later on. So with the weapons Bruno got, they then decide to attack a train. Honestly, what's with this show attacking trains constantly? I swear it's every episode a train gets attacked. But anywho, when they do that, they use gloves that mess up the train tracks, and then the train completely derails and crashes onto the ground. They then break in to steal items from the train, and as they're doing that, the police commissioner and inspector show up and instantly get messed up where they almost crash into a cliff, but Superman saves them. After saving them, Superman has to go stop the thugs with the weapons, but has to save another train as one of the thugs knocked an electric tower down onto the other train track, and then the thugs get away while Superman's busy. Inspector Turpin then goes to spy on Bruno, and as he does, Kanto appears and traps Turpin. They then put it in a warehouse of Bruno's, and Kanto gives Bruno a new weapon that can apparently destroy anyone. As they took him at the weapon, Kanto has a detector that detects Superman coming for them, and now Superman has to try and stop them as he gets through a few thugs. Bruno manages to get a few shots off on Superman and is about to hit him again as Turpin gives Superman the chance to laser the gun out of his hands, and as Kanto is trying to teleport away, Bruno makes a run for him and manages to get sucked in with Kanto. But surprisingly, the episode ends with Apocalypse where we see Kanto and Bruno meeting Darkseid, and god, this ending is cool. The rest of the episode's extremely average, but the ending just sets up a lot of possibilities, and I definitely hope that Darkseid comes back in the future as a big threat to Superman. It's honestly between The Last Son of Krypton Part 1 and My Girl. Final episode of the season, and it starts with the police outside someone's house as they're moving in to get them. The house is reinforced with steel. As the police make their move, the house starts to shoot back at them, and as that's going on, Superman shows up to deal with them. He goes through the walls and eventually gets to a man named Garber. Yeah, it took a bit to find out his name, but Superman asks where the bomb is, and Garber tries to flatten Superman and fails as the mechanism breaks and knocks Garber out by giving him concussion. Now Superman and the police have to find out where the bomb is, and they come up with the idea to ask Rudy about the bomb. Yeah, remember him? Well, they end up negotiating with him to touch Garber so he can see his thoughts. Who knows where the bomb is, but it goes wrong and it ends up hurting Rudy. But after Superman pulls him away, Garber ends up somehow taking over Rudy's body, and he ends up telling Superman where the bomb's meant to be. So Superman and the Commissioner go to the bomb, which is at the bottom of the ocean, and as that's going on, Rudy and Garber are negotiating a deal inside of Rudy's mind to escape, and end up doing so after tricking one guard to come into them so they get their power to escape. Superman and the Commissioner find out the location was a setup as they have to try to escape the boat at the bottom of the ocean as it's collapsing in on itself, and they do so successfully. They get back to see that Rudy and Garber have gone, and not long after, Garber rings the Commissioner and tells Superman to bring them $50 million a loan. Superman agrees and goes down to an abandoned train track where he dumps the suitcase full of money and gets the combination to disarm the bomb. But as Superman disarms the bomb, Garber and Rudy's body comes out of the ground to suck some of Superman's powers out as they both fight. Garber then reactivates the bomb, and then Rudy realizes that Garber used him to get what he wants, so Rudy attacks Garber in the mind to try and gain control again, and that gives Superman the chance to beat Garber. The episode ends with Superman and the Commissioner handing Garber into a jail cell on Stryker's Island as Rudy's laughing and watching cable TV. Yeah, I think this episode's a bit weaker than Feeding Time, but it's still alright. What I like the most about this episode is the mind stuff where Garber and Rudy are talking to each other and negotiating with one another. Also, I don't know if this is meant to be an actual detail of the episode, but seeing Rudy's body color change when Garber's in control is a nice detail. So this is just below Feeding Time but above Last Son of Krypton Part 1. The season's pretty solid. It isn't anything amazing, but all the episodes in the show besides My Girl are at least alright. There are quite a few things set up throughout the season, such as Starro, Brainiac, and Darkseid that I want to see more of in the future, so I'm really hoping that we get more big threats in some of the future episodes to see bigger stakes. The biggest problem about a lot of these episodes in the season is that there isn't really too much to say about them, and most of them are just solid overall. Also, I noticed that all the episodes have a very similar structure. They don't really try and change it at all. So how about we go and find out about how Season 2 is, and we're starting off with... The first episode of Season 2 starts with Superman at Star Labs as the Professor's working on Clark's rocket, as the Professor finds a secret compartment in there. They then find some kind of device at the bottom, which you actually find out to be the Phantom Zone projector. The Professor accidentally gets one of the aliens out of the Phantom Zone to end up being right in front of them, so Superman has to stop the alien and ends up doing so with the Professor's help, with him managing to send the alien back. As they do, they see a Kryptonian named Marla begging to be let out of the Phantom Zone, as she says to ask Jor-El about how she's meant to be out of the Phantom Zone, so Superman goes to the fortress to ask Brainiac about her. Brainiac explains that Marla was the second-in-command general, as they show the General Jax-Ur going rogue against the Council by rallying up the army against the Council, and Marla joined him. They took over the Council until it was Jor-El that actually overpowered them. They were sentenced to be in the Phantom Zone forever, besides from Marla, she was only meant to be in there for 20 years. So with that knowledge, Superman goes to let Marla out of the Phantom Zone as it's the right thing to do, and when she comes out, she's confused about why she's on Earth until she finds out that Krypton is gone. Superman then shows her that she'll end up being like him with all the powers and stuff like that, so they go to a Star Labs facility in the forest to show her powers. Then after learning her powers, she helps Superman with robbers that are stealing money from a bank, where she seems to be a bit too rough for the criminals. But to try and prove her innocence, they decided to talk to the press to show that she's out to do the right thing, but she gets pissed off when Superman says that him and Marla aren't a thing. So Marla attacks Lois Lane, and then Superman comes to stop her as they fight, and Marla says that she'll destroy every person on Earth. Marla gets away as she throws Superman into a building with people inside of it, so he has to save them from dying. Superman saves them, and then Marla manages to get the Phantom Zone projector to let Jax-Ur out, and this is how the first part ends. It's an interesting idea to explore seeing another Kryptonian come to Earth, but I do think that more could have been done with that. Either way, it's a good episode, but I wonder how this two-parter will end. So we start this part off with Superman taking the Professor to the Fortress of Solitude, where he shows him around the place, where the Professor name drops the Fortress of Solitude, and surprisingly, this is the first time it's been named in the show so far, even though it's shown up a few times already. But Superman shows the Professor the orb showing Krypton, where he asks Brainiac how to make the Phantom Zone portal, and as that's going on, Jax-Ur and Marla are taking over the Earth as they're walking around observing how people live. Marla ends up popping a cyclist tire and then causing a bit of havoc, and Superman then comes to stop Marla. As Superman's trying to fight Marla, Jax-Ur gets his powers as well, and he orders Marla to kill Superman, but she fails as Superman gets out and they keep on fighting after Superman ties Jax-Ur around a pole. They keep on fighting, and eventually Marla and Jax-Ur get away as she distracts Superman by kicking some rubble onto Lois Lane. So of course Superman saves her. Superman and the Professor are trying to work on the Phantom Zone projector, but can't quite seem to get it working as they're missing a certain type of crystal that makes it work. But as that's going on, Marla and Jax-O attack the Deadly Planet and take Lewis as a hostage. Superman arrives in his kryptonite-proof suit to show Marla the kryptonite, but as that happens, Superman and the kryptonite get sent to the Phantom Zone and Jax-O destroys the projector. We see Marla and Jax-O destroying many different places across the planet as the Professor manages to pull Superman out of the Phantom Zone and they manage to get the crystal from the broken projector to use for the new projector. Whilst the Professor's fixing the projector, Superman goes to confront Jax-O and Marla as they're about to make the world's leaders surrender to them. They fight for a bit, but eventually Superman brings them to the Phantom Zone projector where they're sent back to the Phantom Zone. This episode ends with Superman putting the projector in the Fortress of Solitude, and honestly, this part is much better. We get to see Marla and Jax-O being bigger threats against Superman and even end up actually being stronger than him since it's a 2v1 situation. The Promethean starts with the space shuttle in space as we see someone on the ship telling the other men that they need to destroy an asteroid as it's going to hit Metropolis in a few hours. After they talk about it, Superman comes up and basically does all the work instead of the men on the ship, but as Superman's putting the bombs on the asteroid, he sees that some kind of a giant being's chained up to the asteroid. They then decided to move the asteroid into Earth's atmosphere, and as Superman's adjusting the asteroid, the creature wakes up and starts to try and break out of its restraints. One of the men on the ship decides to activate the explosives without anyone else's permission, and after they do that, the creature's heading towards Metropolis. Superman tries to stop it, but he can't as the creature crash lands into the ocean, and when it does, it causes a tsunami, so Superman has to set the people on the boat not too far from the creature. We then go to the scientists from Star Labs, but they find out that the alien creature gains its power from absorbing heat, and the more heat it absorbs, the stronger it gets. So the military are attacking the creature and basically making it stronger because it's sucking in the heat from the explosions, but eventually Superman convinces them to stop as the creature then goes for the city. When it goes for the city, they manage to shut the power off, and Superman guides the creature by using his laser vision to heat up a metal beam to guide the creature to a dam, where they end up freezing the water so the creature's defeated. God, this episode was honestly quite boring. Probably the worst episode yet. Just isn't very interesting at all, and the whole episode is just the same structure, the creature doing something where Superman has to save people over and over again, and it's just so repetitive. It was to the point where I was getting bored whilst watching this episode, so it's definitely at the bottom of the list. I hope the next episode's much better. Fuck yes, we get to see the Flash as we actually start the episode with Superman and the Flash meeting up to do a race to see who's faster. But I honestly love the confidence and the cockiness that the Flash has, as it really feels like the character's done right instead of this shit. No! No! So this race is being done as a charity event, and basically both Superman and the Flash get trackers on them to see where they are during the race. But after that's done, they start the race and zoom through Metropolis, instead of living in the city to run through the desert and even on the ocean. They're both very close to each other, but during the race, there's a villain called Weather Wizard getting ready to attack them during their race, and even threatens the general by saying that they're going to set off storms in the north of Australia. So as Superman and the Flash are racing each other, we see a big storm affecting a boat out in the ocean as a giant wave hits them, but Superman and the Flash go and help. By the way, these Australian accents definitely aren't great, but I've seen much worse. So Superman and the Flash save them by getting all the men out of the boat and fixing the oil from leaking out of the boat. Right after they save them, the weather clears out, and both the Flash and Superman find out about Weather Wizard as they see it on the TV inside the boat as they keep going on with their race. They make it back to the US, where it starts to randomly snow to the point where it's a blizzard and everything around them's frozen. It's even that they called it they both managed to become frozen ice blocks, but Superman gets out by using his laser vision. They figure out that the Weather Wizard's actually tracking them by using those armbands, so they decide to destroy them. After destroying them, they meet up with the General to see what the Weather Wizard's demanding, and basically he wants money or he will destroy Metropolis. But the Weather Wizard's accomplice wants out of it, so he leaves, but the Weather Wizard attacks him by sending a giant hailstorm on him as he's driving away, so the General detects the weather anomaly and saves the guy. So now Superman and the Flash go to stop Weather Wizard, but the Flash gets wounded by a weather shield set up on Weather Wizard's house. Superman gets in by going underground where he confronts Weather Wizard as the Flash then manages to come in and ends up accidentally causing a mini tornado in the house where the weapon the Weather Wizard was using gets destroyed. But the episode ends with the Flash and Superman redoing their race and actually finding out who's the fastest. I fuck with this episode. Just a really fun episode where we get to see a bit of the Flash before we obviously get him in the Justice League show. It's a perfect kind of episode to introduce a character like the Flash, where it's just about Superman and the Flash trying to see who's the fastest, but having to do hero things whilst trying to do their race. Goes on the top. Before I start off with different people listening to the radio, such as Jimmy Olsen at the Daily Planet, as some woman saying that they're sick of Superman. But Clark and Lewis are waiting in the lobby of the radio show as they're invited onto the show, where the radio host questions what's with Superman and Lewis, but as that's going on, a crane's breaking down, so Superman has to come and help the man in the crane before it completely breaks down and kills someone. The crane breaks, but Superman manages to save the man in the crane, but ends up saving a woman and her baby by catching a crane before it falls on them. And as Superman's doing this, the radio woman's criticizing Superman for only caring about himself. Also, I literally had to look up what the radio host's name is, and apparently it's Leslie. So instead of the radio host, it's Leslie, I guess. But after Superman saves the people, Clark and Lois go to Leslie's show that she's hosting in the middle of Metropolis, and it's pissing down with rain, and eventually the police come in to tell her to shut down the show, because obviously electricity and rain don't mix. She rallies the people against the police, so Superman comes to try and convince them to go home, but the people are on her side as she's arguing with Superman. She ends up getting hit by lightning where Superman takes her to the hospital. She ends up waking up and realizes that she can suck in electricity to use it as she wants to, and ends up attacking 2 doctors and leaving by going through a power outlet and a wall. She ends up in the middle of Metropolis where she's destroying stuff with her electricity, so Superman comes to stop her, so she ends up hurting Superman and turning off all the electricity in Metropolis. She then broadcasts to everyone that she owns Metropolis now, and as that's happening, she gets interrupted by a backup generator, so she then goes to take it out where she then meets Superman again. They fight for a bit, eventually she gets the upper hand for a bit, and then she ends up accidentally hitting the dam where she ends up being taken out. In this episode, Livewire just screams D-tier villain, as she isn't really that interesting at all and can be easily defeated. But also the episode ends with her being tested on as her eyes light up, and the episode itself isn't that bad, even though I'm not a fan of Livewire as a character. Sure, she showed up in Batman the Animated Series before, and I talked about that episode when I ranked the whole series, but even then in that episode she wasn't great. Just not a very interesting character, but a pretty standard Superman episode. Above the Promethean, but below Blast from the Past Part 1. We start off with kids in an electrical tower, as one of them is in the tower and is scared to climb down, obviously because he could be electrocuted to death. But of course in this situation, Superman comes and saves the boy where he asks why they are there, and basically the boy on the tower got dared to do it, so Superman tells them to use their head and not do dangerous things. Bro, this is the kind of Superman I love. The Superman that actually cares about people and really takes the time to talk to them and to be kind with them even in situations like this. Superman gets praised as he's flying around, but here's a police chase, so Superman comes to stop the car they're chasing after where they're handed into the police, but a car behind them can't brake in time and nearly goes off the cliff until Superman saves them and even catches Clark Kent. Hold on, that's odd. So Superman saves them and even asks Lois out for dinner, and obviously Clark is super confused about what's going on, so he then decides to suit up and find out who this other Superman is. As Superman catches up to the other one, we see that they're starting to become white all over and eventually become Bizarro as he ends up leaving. Bizarro gets away and then goes to Lex to fix himself up, but we find out that Bizarro is a failed clone of Superman that Lex created. Bizarro gets pissed off after Mercy makes fun of his looks, so to prove her wrong, he tries to be Superman but ends up nearly killing a bunch of people after flying a crane into a bunch of people, and even nearly kills all the people on the boat by making a bridge not pull up as the boat's approaching it. So obviously Superman has to save them as well. But Lois's date with quote-unquote Superman comes up where Bizarro reveals himself, and then Superman comes to where Bizarro throws Superman into the Daily Planet globe on the top. So Superman has to stop it from falling onto people as Bizarro takes Lois. Lois ends up persuading Bizarro to take Lois to the lab where it's revealed that Lex is making clones of Superman as Lex comes out from the shadows. Lex explains that he got Superman's DNA from the dinosaur fight he had when Lex found out about Superman's weakness, and Bizarro says that he is Superman as Lex electrocutes Bizarro and sets up a bomb for the whole place to blow up in 2 minutes. Bizarro starts breaking stuff as he says that he is Superman, and then Superman shows up to get Lex, the scientist, and Lois out of the building, but Lois gets stuck on some rubble that fell on her. As Superman's saving Lois, Bizarro gets it that he is Superman and helps him get out as the bomb's about to go off, and it ends up going off with Bizarro inside. The episode ends with Lois and Superman hoping that Bizarro survived as he ended up being a good guy in the end, but yeah, this is a solid episode. I will say though that I think that they could have had a bit more of an emotional core to Bizarro's character, like what Batman the Animated Series would do with quite a few of their villains, as I think it would have really worked for Bizarro. Besides that, it's just a very solid episode. It's above Livewire but below Blast from the Past Part 1. Target starts an awards ceremony called the Excalibur Awards as the host is handing out awards. We see Lois and Clark in attendance. As Lois gets nominated, she gets a note that says you win, you die. She ends up winning and goes up to accept her award and starts to give her speech as Clark comes up with some excuse to excuse himself so he can suit up and save her, and ends up doing so before the giant Excalibur falls on her. The police start to investigate, but we see that one of the investigators really doesn't like Lois, but after that, on their way home, someone hijacks their car by taking over the radio station and then taking over the car going full throttle. Clark tries to find a way out for them by cutting off the roof on a convertible and jumping onto another car, but Lois swerves and Clark falls out of the car and off the bridge. So as Lois goes to jump out, the airbag activates and now she's stuck in the car, but as Lois crashes and is about to fall to her death, Superman saves her. Superman finds out that a device was attached to her car that gave this person access to everything in her car. So the next day, Lois goes to a friend of hers to find out more about the device and who would have made it. They find out it's a bit of tech from LexCorp and that someone part of LexCorp wants her dead, so Lois goes to interrogate Lex about this, and Lex just tells her straight up that he has nothing to do with it and that he's surprised about this device. So after that, Clark and Lois go back to the Daily Planet where they run into one of the nominees for the Excalibur Awards where they're looking extremely suspicious.
Hey yo, that man's sus.
Lois goes into the elevator to find a bomb in it, and she has a minute to get out before she gets blown up, and Clark sees the elevator going up so fast, and the elevator even goes through the roof of the building and up into the sky because it has rockets on the bottom. Superman manages to catch up just before the bomb goes off, but we then see later that night when she's trying to sleep that she's awoken by an intruder that accidentally knocks into a table. The intruder manages to get Lois and then throws her off the building until she wakes up, but when she does that, someone was watching her sleep, and that was the investigator that doesn't like her watching her with binoculars. The next day, Lois goes back to the friend of hers and finds out that he's the one trying to kill her, and as that's going on, Clark finds out that it's him as Lex rings to try and talk to Lois to warn her about it, so now Superman has to come and save her as he has her in a laser trap. Apparently this guy's name's Lightner, but he's ready for Superman to show up as he puts on a suit and make him stronger as he manages to land some good blows against Superman. But as he's about to land a death blow, Superman manages to kick his ass and even throws him against the laser trap, destroy the suit, and manages to save Lois just before she gets hit by the lasers. The episode ends with Lois thanking Superman and just wondering how Superman manages to show up in the nick of time, and she even says it would be nice to see Superman when she isn't about to be killed. Yeah, I like this episode quite a lot too. It's an interesting mystery to find out who wants Lois dead, but it's a bit cheap when they make it the guy that shows up halfway through the episode because they kind of just throw him in to throw your thoughts off of who it might be before then. Like shit, I thought it was a completely different character before then, but that character shows up halfway through and it ends up being him, and it's like, oh, really? That's just cheap. Anyways, goes above Livewire but below Identity Crisis. Holy shit, it's Gilbert Gottfried!
I'm pissing and shitting and coming.
And it starts off with Mr. Mxyzptlk walking in front of cars. As one's about to hit him, Superman comes and stops the car. But Mxyzptlk just turns into bubbles and disappears. So we then cut to the Daily Planet as Jimmy is laughing about a comic, and Jimmy shows it to Clark where we see Mr. Mxyzptlk on a comic strip, and as Clark pronounces it, he comes out of the comic to tell Clark that it's more like
Mix? Yes. Spit. Lick.
Then he hops out of the comic looking for something, but as Clark tries to grab him, he just turns back into the magazine. Clark asks Lois if she saw a little man, but she thinks that he's nuts until the next scene at the art museum where he shows up after a worker was going to show off a new piece in the museum. He's walking around the museum trying to find someone named Madurk and ends up being the art piece that's the sculpture of a man, and as Mxyzptlk sees the sculpture, it comes to life. Clark suits up to confront him, but uses the statue to punch him, and after Superman destroys the statue, puts Superman behind the sculpture like it never moved as people are annoyed that he punched the sculpture's head off. Clark then goes back to his parents' place for a bit of help, but then it seems like he's taken over them as well, as they start pecking on the ground like chickens and even turn into chickens as Mxyzptlk shows up and feeds them. He changes the animals into different animals until he changes them into alien creatures that want to eat Clark, but he ends up convincing them to change them back where he puts them in a painting. Clark ends up getting answers on who Mxyzptlk is, and he explains that he's from the 5th dimension and that he wants the ultimate challenge by challenging Superman by having a bit of fun. Superman ends up beating him by making him say his name backwards, as that's apparently the only way to make him go back to his dimension, and after that, things go back to normal until we get a 3-month time skip. We then skip 3 months in time where we see Clark doing his morning routine as he easily makes quick work of him by outsmarting him, and it's hilarious.
Your 3 months are up, and this time you're not gonna cheat me out of my fun.
Oh, it's you again, Mr. Kiltipsism.
Not Kiltipsism, Mxyzptlk. Now, the first thing I'm gonna do... Oh, nuts.
3 months pass again as he shows up as Clark is writing a paper and ends up sending him straight back as he intentionally added spelling mistakes to spell out his name backwards. We don't get a time skip this time, but we actually see Mxyzptlk go back to his dimension where he seems to be fuming mad and telling his partner how mad he is until she gives him the idea to destroy him before he has the chance to send him back to his dimension. So he spends 3 months creating a giant metal machine ready to fight him, but when he gets sent through, he comes back within 3 seconds and tells his partner not one word. We get another 3-month time skip where Mxyzptlk hasn't shown up yet until a penguin waddles, and that's when Clark knows that he's here. He tries to come up with the new rules where Clark has to say his name backwards twice, and that he won't come back ever again if he does that. But Clark's sick of it and says that he quits, then flies away as Mxyzptlk catches up to say that Superman won't outfly him. He then starts to attack Superman by turning into an attack plane and then a rocket with a kryptonite warhead. He ends up hitting Superman with it, and then Superman reveals that he made him spell out his name backwards twice with the smoke from the plane and the warhead he'd become, so he disappeared back to his dimension. Clark's happier than ever to get rid of him, but back in his dimension he says that he isn't done with Superman. But his partner says that he can find another way to pass the time as they smooch, but he then turns the Superman statue into a symbol monkey, and that's how the episode ends. It's so lighthearted, but Mxyzptlk is such a great and fun character as he really gives me Looney Tunes vibes, but in the best way possible. I think that this is the best episode yet. It's an extremely entertaining, lighthearted episode. Action Figures starts with Angelo on Channel 3 giving a report on Corbin, wondering where he may be, as the last time they saw him was before he went into the ocean with Lex and Superman. But after that we see a volcano smoking as it's shaking the island, and as that's going on, a kid's playing with their action figures as her sister asks if she can play as well, but gets told to play with their own dolls. We then see Metallic come out of the ocean where his skin's completely gone as he approaches the girl, but she shits herself and tries to run away. She ends up accidentally falling as Metallo saves her from the rubble coming off the hill. The kids ask who he is, but he seems to not remember who he is, so they decide to take Metallo through the island where they see someone's truck as they're about to fall off the cliff, and Metallo comes in to save them as the truck's going on fire from the leaking oil. We then see Clark and Lewis at the Daily Planet as Lewis manages to get the chance to go to the island to find out who this robot actually is. As that's going on, we see the kids give Metallo a doll that they made, and it was of Superman as Metallo starts to remember that he had a fight against Superman and he crushes the doll. The next day, we see the father leaving for work as the two kids go to see Metallo. Lewis is trying to find out where Metallo might possibly be as she thinks it's him. When the kids see Metallo, he convinces them that he's from another planet and that he's actually there to deliver a message to the world's leaders, so the kids come up with a disguise to get him off the island. As they're getting a disguise, Lewis catches up to them and the kids shut the door on her, and we see that Superman's talking to the kid's father asking about the robot and he has no idea about it, but as they're talking the volcano starts to erupt. So Superman saves them by creating a path for the lava to go so nobody will be hurt by leading it into the water and making one simple stream. Kids put on the disguise for Metallo, and as they're doing that, he sees Lewis, so he grabs her and holds her hostage, but whilst that's going on, everyone's trying to evacuate and the father's trying to find them. But luckily, as Metallo was going to leave Lewis on the island, Superman comes with his kryptonite-proof suit to deal with him. Metallo manages to break Superman's kryptonite-proof suit by putting him in lava, but Superman beats him by pulling the kryptonite out of his chest and throwing it into the lava as Metallo goes after it. Superman then saves the kids and Lewis, where it seems like Metallo's dead as he's covered in lava, as the episode ends with Metallo talking about how he needs to remember that he's Metallo. Yeah, this episode's alright. Malcolm McDowell's great as usual, but I think it should have been a two-parter where Metallo has more of a gradual descent back into his old ways, to where the viewer can really feel like he's changed for the better. Aside from the whole story feeling a bit rushed for a 20-minute episode, it goes above Livewire but below target. This is a double dose, it better be double the good. Well, I hope so at least. But it starts at Star Labs as a janitor named Dammy is sweeping the hallways whilst listening to music, but he walks through past the no electric sign with his music still on as Livewire tries to get his attention. She then escapes her cell by using his Walkman and then escapes the facility by going through a light switch on the wall and impels a cart to leave when we see the SCU finding out about her escape with Superman in attendance. Livewire shows up and electrocutes the main investigator by kissing him, and then Superman and Livewire fight as she obviously wants revenge on Superman for what happened in the episode Livewire. Superman tries to take her out, but she escapes as he's trying to spray her with water, and she says that she'll be back and will kill him. Right after that, we see Rudy in his cell laughing as he's watching TV, where Livewire comes and proposes that they team up to take out Superman. He accepts because he decides to act like an absolute simp, even though he doesn't have much motivation to want to take Superman out, as he helped Rudy out. She escapes with Rudy from Stryker's Island, and as Rudy's going on a boat to go to Metropolis, Superman picks it up and Rudy ends up jumping off the boat to absorb the power of the shark, so now they fight underwater where he becomes a fast swimmer. Rudy ends up escaping as Rudy and Livewire catch up at an electrical substation where Rudy's trying to be an absolute sleaze, and Livewire puts him in his place. But they come up with a plan to get rid of Superman, and then she disappears right after that. But after seeing Lewis getting ready to go back to the SCU, we see Livewire and Rudy break into an electrical substation where Rudy's still being a sleaze. Guards end up showing up to stop them where they're easily dealt with, and Superman comes in after them where he covers himself in plastic so he isn't going to be affected by the electricity of Rudy's powers. Well, with some quick thinking, Livewire and Rudy freeze Superman, so the plastic's gone, and as Livewire's about to kill Superman, Rudy sucks most of the power out of Livewire, so now he has Superman and Livewire's power. Superman's slowly trying to escape without his power, and Superman gets a broom in the janitor's closet as Rudy accidentally sets it on fire. Superman uses it to set off the sprinklers, so Rudy's defeated. The episode ends with Livewire and Rudy going back to prison as Superman flies away into the night sky. I just have similar feelings about this episode as I do with Livewire. It's alright, but honestly nothing special at all. Above Livewire but below action figures. So we're back on Stryker's Island for this episode where we see Edward Leitner. Yeah, remember that guy from Target that wanted to kill Lewis, as he has a device on his waistband. He approaches some guards as a helicopter lands on the island, and as the guards pull a gun on him, he uses a device and teleports behind the guard, knocking him out. He then teleports again and manages to get into the helicopter. As he's flying away, he makes the helicopter teleport as well. After that, Clark's at the Daily Planet as Lewis brings him to cover her as she has to go on Stryker's Island to find out where Leitner is. But as she's going, her tram is stopped and she tries to escape. She sees that Leitner's trying to cut off the tram from the tracks, and Superman comes and can't lift it, so Leitner appears to tell Superman that he's Luminous now and that he did something to Superman that he'll find out soon. Luminous disappears as Superman saves Lewis from the falling tram, and after struggling to pick it up, he tries to see what's wrong with him by testing his powers, but as he does, he sees that the sun's red. Scientists explain that there's satellites in the sky that are putting on a filter on the light from the sun to make it look red on Earth, which drains Superman's powers. Lewis blames Lex for trying to help him, and he reassures her that he has nothing to do with Leitner at all, so Lewis and Jimmy are trying to find out more about what's going on, as Clark sees a white S in the sky in the shape of his logo, so he suits up to see what it is. He finds Luminous as he says that he's probably about half the strength now, so he explains that he wants to kill Superman for getting in the way, so they fight for a bit as Superman manages to use water to find out which one is the real Luminous, but as he does, he manages to get away from Superman. Lewis and Jimmy find a potential lead with the facility of Lex's, which seems to be invisible, as they find it and manage to get their way into the invisible facility. When they do, they're trapped in there with lasers blocking them off as Luminous comes up to them. Superman was about to use his rocket to take out the satellites, but as he does that, Luminous shows up as a hologram to show that he has Jimmy and Lewis tied up, so Superman tries to go and save them even though he's almost powerless. He goes through the facility where it seems to end up being a bunch of different places such as a western bar, then ending up on train tracks as the train's approaching, and even a pirate ship. When he's on the pirate ship, Superman ends up getting Luminous to accidentally stab a hole in one of the walls of the simulation, so Superman uses that same sword to cut a hole through it to find Jimmy and Lewis tied up, as they're trying to tell him something, but it's too late as Luminous shows up behind him. He punches Superman and then he keeps on lasering him until Superman manages to move the laser towards the device controlling the satellites that are showing the sun as red, so they end up being destroyed so the sky becomes blue again and Superman gets his powers back. He beats Luminous and then saves Jimmy and Lewis as the episode ends with Superman handing him into the authorities and then flying away into the sky. I swear half of these episodes end with Superman flying into the sky. It's probably just a thing with this show, but I actually like this episode quite a lot. It's a first taste of a villain that actually can compete with Superman and almost beats him until he makes one mistake that ruins his whole plan. I'm not a fan of Luminous as a character, as I said in Target, as he really doesn't have much development, but it's an entertaining episode. Above Target but below Identity Crisis. Brave New Metropolis starts with Lewis and Jimmy at Star Labs as they're talking about a new device they created that can potentially look into other dimensions. They show that the device isn't quite working at the moment, but Lewis finds out that it is working as in between the two posts the windows are broken, but outside of that they aren't. So Lewis goes closer to it and accidentally gets her hand stuck in the device where she gets pulled into another dimension where she sees that the place is abandoned in this universe. She walks out to see Metropolis, but no one seems to be on the streets as she then sees a shrine of Lex and Superman as we see a different Superman logo and an announcement that the curfew started, as everyone has to be home before 10 PM. Investigator Turpin comes up and asks for a curfew badge, and she obviously doesn't have one since she's about to get taken in by him, but Turpin runs away as he hears an explosion, so he goes to look at it. Turpin goes to stop the people that set off the explosion and break into Lex Cop, and as Lewis is looking, she runs into Jimmy as he's surprised to see her and subtly questions how she's there. Superman shows up to stop the thugs by picking up the first two and throwing them and then blowing up their car. They all get arrested besides Jimmy and Lewis as they escape, and Jimmy explains to Lewis that she's meant to be dead, but takes her underground and explains that the thugs put a bomb in her car and that Superman was too late in their universe. He goes on to say that when she died, that's when Superman went off the deep end and partnered with Lex, but as Jimmy takes Lewis to their place of refuge, Lex's men break in and take everyone. Even Lewis, where she ends up being questioned by Lex. Lex comes up with a plan to kill Lewis without Superman finding out, because if he found out, he'd possibly go against Lex. He gets Mercy to go and kill Lewis, but she ends up stealing a gun and running away, as she even manages to stop a police car by shooting one of the tires. Lewis climbs the giant monument as a helicopter's on her, and even tries to shoot at her, so she ends up going to the top where she's confronted by Superman. Lewis faints and Superman grabs her and flies away, and when she wakes up she explains that she's from a different dimension and explains that he's nothing like the Superman she knows, but also that Lex tried to kill her. So Superman goes to confront Lex, but Lex has kryptonite in his pocket that weakens him, and as Lex is doing that, Lewis fights Mercy. As that's going on, the homeless people from earlier that were locked up come in to help them as Superman let them out beforehand and explains the situation, but Lex manages to get a jet and takes off. But as he's flying, Superman catches up to Lex after being weakened by kryptonite. He accidentally pulls a wing off his plane, so he ends up crashing into Lex's monument. Superman then takes Lewis back to Star Labs to see that the portal opens again as Lewis kisses this version of Superman and leaves with a normal Superman. This episode ends with Superman flying Lewis as she asks him out to dinner. This episode's an absolute banger. It's basically Injustice but done right, where it makes more sense why he did what he did, and it isn't just that he completely dives into the deep end. He gets worse, but he doesn't go straight into just killing people just because Lewis died. He created an order where he tried to create peace with people, but it ended up backfiring for him because he decided to work with Lex. Also, to see the different version of Metropolis is really cool, and I also gotta say that the music is so fucking good, and it goes way harder than it needs to. This is probably at the top of the list.
Me and my monkey.
Unfortunately not, but this episode starts with kids playing with a toy monkey, but also an actual monkey as we see that the father has scientists studying the monkey as they're launching it into space. The monkey doesn't want to go, but is forced into a rocket into space anyways, as the rocket ends up going haywire and it starts to completely spin out of control and the station loses the rocket. We get a time skip to 20 years later and we see Superman in space, and he's going to a space station as meteors with a blue light around it are headed towards the station, and Superman ends up finding the monkey in the rocket of one of the meteors. They take the monkey back to Metropolis, and as it turns out, Lewis was actually one of those kids that looked after the monkey named Titano, as the monkey surprisingly remembers Lewis. The scientists at Star Labs recommend that Lewis keeps the monkey as the monkey likes her, and we see the monkey grow in size as Lewis leaves Jimmy Olsen with the monkey. The monkey keeps on getting bigger and bigger, and you can't make this shit up. But as Jimmy's running away, he slips on a banana peel and almost kills himself by falling off the building, but Superman comes to save him. Titano gets away and ends up going to the zoo where he ends up scaring everyone, but he lets all the monkeys at the zoo out. Titano just keeps on growing in size. As Superman comes to stop Titano, he has to save the kids from a lion and a tiger, but he then manages to catch up to Titano as the police are trying to use tranquilizers on him. Superman and Titano fight on the docks for a bit and eventually fight at a carnival. Lewis's dad manages to come in and give Lewis the toy monkey to try and calm Titano down, and after losing the toy for a little bit, they end up finding it and playing the Pop Goes the Weasel song from the monkey over the loudspeaker. It ends up distracting him to the point where they're able to use gas on him to make him fall asleep, so they end up putting Titano on an island where he's now the protector of the monkeys on the island. You know, I'm honestly so sick of saying the same thing with most episodes. It's an alright episode though. It's a very run-of-the-mill like episode and there isn't anything special to note about it. Above the Promethean but below Livewire. Goes to the machine starts at LexCorp as Lex showing off a new piece of tech to select a group of people including Clark and Lewis. Lex comes out and opens the roof of the place as he's giving his speech. He says that 2 missiles are coming straight to their direction, but a new device he created will make sure that those missiles won't make it to them and will keep them safe. Lex sends 2 missiles after them where the device fails, so Clark has to suit up and stop the missiles from hitting them and successfully does. Lex is pissed off, obviously because he doesn't like Superman, and everyone in attendance is pissed off about the outcome. Lex says he's going to investigate who it was, as we then hear Clark and Lewis trying to discuss who might have done it, as they're trying to find out who might have done it as well. Lex ends up getting a call that night from an unknown person telling him to meet in Sector 6, so he ends up doing so and ends up getting trapped by one of his devices as Lex finds out that Brainiac is the one that sabotages the new piece of tech. Brainiac tells Lex that he is to help him create his new body and ends up convincing Lex to do the work to create his body. We see Lex working on it for what seems to be a week as he grows a bit of facial hair and looks like shit, and as that's going on, Clark is trying to see Lex to get answers. He ends up getting through to his office where they find out that he isn't there after Brainiac was convincing everyone that Lex was in his office the whole time. After Clark leaves, he ends up telling Lewis about it, and as he is, he ends up getting another call asking if it's Clark Kent. He says yes as a missile comes straight for him, but he manages to stop it. But when he's stopping the missile, it accidentally goes off and blows up a bridge, as he then manages to stop the bridge from hitting the ground and possibly killing civilians. We then see Mercy finding out that Lex went into Sector 6 last, and as she finds that out, Brainiac sends out robots to kill her as she manages to fend off the first 3 until another 10 walk in as Superman shows up. Superman gets rid of the robots and then convinces Mercy to show him where Lex was last seen. So they go to Sector 6 to find Lex, but as they're gonna go find him, Brainiac takes over the body as it's nearly finished, as Lex says he's done, and as Lex is trying to leave, Brainiac shoots Lex with a beam, knocking him out. Superman and Mercy end up getting there to see Lex knocked out as Mercy's approaching and Brainiac comes out to show Superman that he's back and ready. Brainiac knocks out Mercy as Superman fights Brainiac, and Brainiac manages to get the upper hand until Superman uses the tech that Lex was showing off at the start of the episode to shoot Brainiac. It ends up defeating him as Brainiac becomes a giant magnetic field. As Lex runs away, Mercy gets stuck under some rubble as Superman ends up saving her. The episode ends with Lex digging up all the rubble as he wants to use Brainiac's tech for his own benefit, and he gets approached by Superman as Lex tells him that it's all his equipment anyways. Lex ends up leaving with Mercy as Superman flies away. Alright, this is a pretty good episode. It's interesting to see Brainiac come back in this way where he uses Lex for his own game by making Lex build him a new suit. It's nice stuff. This episode starts off on Apokolips where we see someone named Desaad looking at Metropolis through a screen, and then we see Lewis on a run as she sees some kind of device as an arm comes out of it. Clark hears Lewis on the phone telling the Daily Planet about it, so he suits up to go deal with it, and as he does, Lewis gets grabbed and Superman destroys the arms off the device. It then shoots Superman and starts trying to do other things to try and hurt him, and as Superman's fighting the device, Darkseid gives Desaad an order to make it self-destruct. So Superman lifts it up so it doesn't hurt anyone as it blows up. Darkseid tells Desaad that the device was his last chance, but Mannheim wants to go back to Earth. Darkseid says no and uses Omega beams on him. Instead of vaporizing him, he gets teleported into a mining facility where he's basically a slave. Desaad ends up convincing Kalibak to let him send him to Earth by saying that Darkseid will accept him if he takes down Superman. We then go back to Metropolis to see Martin Parr Kent with Clark at the Daily Planet as they meet Lewis. They ask Lewis if they want to go out for lunch with him, and as they're doing that, Kalibak arrives in Metropolis and ends up wreaking havoc in the restaurant they decide to go to. For some reason they don't flee straight away, but decide to move when Kalibak knocks down a support beam for the roof, so Clark quickly suits up to go help Jonathan as he's still in there. Superman and Kalibak end up fighting before he gets the chance to save Jonathan, and as they're fighting, Darkseid finds out that Kalibak's on Earth and decides trying to explain that he wanted to prove his worth as Darkseid's son, but Darkseid says that he has no son. Superman ends up knocking out Kalibak after making him stand on an electrical part of the train track, but Kalibak quickly gets back up and continues to fight. They fight again for a while as Martha accidentally says Clark, look out, as Lewis hears her say that, so she's obviously confused about that. Wonder if that will come back somehow on the show. But Superman beats Kalibak by throwing him ages away and ends up saving Jonathan as he name drops the title of the episode. When Kalibak lands, he sees a boom tube as Darkseid appears in front of him as he uses Omega beams on him and makes him disappear. Superman appears and Darkseid uses Omega beams on him and wakens Superman, as he says that the world will be under Darkseid's rule. The episode ends with Darkseid saying that he kept Superman alive, and that he'll die soon enough, but not yet. Darkseid goes so fucking hard, even though he appears for like a minute or two in this episode. I'm absolutely keen to see what they do with him in the future, but as this episode goes, it's alright. Nothing special, but just the fact that we get a taste of Darkseid makes me excited for when he comes back, because I really hope that he is the big massive threat that he's been teased to be so far in the series. The episode goes above target but below solar power. Oh shit, okay. We got a three-parter on our hands, and we started an antique store where they're closing the shop for the night as Harley Quinn in disguise rocks up and uses laughing gas on the store owner. Also, I recognise that music. Nice little touch there. But as Harley does that, the Joker walks in to take a dragon antique, and he manages to put it in the box Harley has. We then see Commissioner Gordon and Detective Bullock as they're investigating the store, as Batman comes in to find shards of the dragon antique, so he takes a bit to scan it back at the Batcave. So this episode's for real just turning into Batman the Animated Series episode. I'm honestly down for that, and it's something interesting for the show. But Batman does tests on the shard to find out that the dragon antique is kryptonite without saying it. We then go to Lois on a plane as terrorists take over the plane, and the terrorists were going to shoot Lois, and after she tries to ring someone on the phone, the terrorists realise that Superman's always coming to save her, and realise that they're basically fucked. Superman makes quick work of them and ends up talking to Lois as she makes another attempt to see Superman when she isn't in trouble. So that other time where the episode ended with Lois asking Superman on a date just went nowhere, or what's going on with that? Anywho, robbers attack the National Bank, so Superman has to leave Lois there as she asks to see him when her life isn't being threatened. We then cut to Lex as he asks Mercy to get the car ready, and when she does, she gets knocked out by Harley Quinn. So when Lex gets in the car, he finds Harley in the driver's seat as she locks him in as they pick up the Joker. The Joker ends up proposing a deal to Lex to pay him $1 billion to kill Superman, as he has the dragon carved out of kryptonite. Lex says he doesn't want to be associated with it and he wants to stay clean. The Joker agrees, so they end up agreeing on a deal. After that, we see Clark and Lois at the airport as they're waiting for Bruce Wayne to come out of his private jet, and Bruce ends up coming up to Lois as he flirts with her for a bit and then ends up asking her out for dinner at 8 the next night. We then go to a restaurant where the Joker comes in to find a place to keep his things whilst he's in Metropolis as he takes over Carlini's restaurant that he uses as a front for his gang. Joker uses laughing gas on Carlini, and after he takes over the place, we see Carlini in the hospital as the investigator and Superman are looking at him and they know it's the Joker. The next day we see Bruce with Lex as Lex is showing off a piece of tech that he made as Lex proposes that they could use it as military tech as well, and Bruce says no as he doesn't like guns. Right after that, Bruce is out with Lois for dinner as they are talking about Batman and Superman, but Lois says that she's hoping that she wouldn't have to talk about those things for the one night. So Bruce offers to dance with her. Later on we see Clark trying to hear more about the Joker, and right after that Bruce suits up and breaks into a nightclub where he confronts a man named Binko after taking out his henchman. He's trying to find out where the Joker is, and as he's getting information out of Binko, Superman tells him to stop, but Batman throws Superman off him and then Superman knocks Batman onto the ground. Superman uses X-ray vision to find out that Batman's Bruce Wayne, and after that he shows Superman that he had kryptonite and that the Joker has 20 more pounds of it. The episode then ends with Clark going back to his hotel room where Lois rings him. Clark answers and Lois says that she'll be late tomorrow, she's going out for breakfast with Bruce, and as they're talking, Clark sees that there's a tracker on his suit to find out that Bruce is spying on him to find out who Superman is. Best fucking episode yet, hands down. I think that the dynamic of the Joker and Lex, as well as the dynamic of Batman and Superman, works so well as all the characters at this point are well developed and work extremely well together as the characters are different to each other in many different ways. They're also entertaining to watch and I'm definitely keen to see where this three-parter goes. Top of the list. Alright, part 2 baby! We started the Daily Planet with Lois as Bruce approaches Lois and tells him to wait a moment as she has to see the Chief before they leave, so Clark is left with Bruce. They talk about the Joker as they both can't find him, and Clark says that he's concerned about Bruce and what he does, as Lois then comes back and they leave. We see Bruce and Lois out for dinner as they're about to kiss. The Joker comes up and ends up tasering Lois, and as Bruce tries to get the Joker, his thugs shoot at Bruce's feet as he accidentally falls off the building. Bruce doesn't fall to his death but falls onto a conveyor belt as the Joker's thugs shoot at him and the conveyor belt gives way as Bruce ends up landing on a bit of the building. The Joker leaves after trying to shoot him again, and after that we see Superman and Bruce talking as Bruce warns him that the Joker will use Lois as bait and to expect the unexpected with the Joker. We see Lois tied up as the Joker tells her they gotta get ready to see the death of Superman, but as that's going on, Superman's with Turpin as the Joker calls. The Joker tells him that he has Lois and gives Superman his location as he tells him to come alone. Superman shows up in his kryptonite-proof suit asking where Lois is, so the Joker goes to the kryptonite where it doesn't work because obviously of the suit. And the Joker realizes that, so he uses the acid from his flower to destroy the suit. After he destroys it, he throws the kryptonite at him. The Joker electrocutes Superman as he's on the ground, and as that's going on, Batman comes in and deals with the thugs. Batman walks into the room to find Superman on the ground as Lois is tied up, and as Batman goes to leave, the door's shut on him. The Joker ends up releasing laughing gas in the room as they have to find a way out. Batman finds hydrochloric acid, and as Superman's weak, he tells Batman to use it on the kryptonite. When Batman uses it on the kryptonite, Superman gets his strength back, grabs Batman and Lois, and also manages to break out of the room. The Joker and Harley are headed for the exit as Superman and Batman approach them. The Joker throws marbles at them as they end up all exploding, giving the Joker and Harley time to escape, and Superman thanks Batman for his help. The next day we see Joker and Harley sitting around as Lex and Mercy walk in guns blazing, as Lex obviously is pissed off that the Joker didn't hold up his part of the deal. Mercy and Harley fight as the Joker explains what happened to Lex, and that he can still deal with them but he needs more money. Lex says no to more money, but that the Joker still needs to hold up his part of the deal. Right after that, Clark goes to see Lois to tell her that the Joker might be in cahoots with Lex, as Bruce is there as well in the room and he says that he could just ask. So later that night, Batman breaks into Lex's room asking him for information, but doesn't get anything out of him, so he ends up leaving before his men break into the room. Right after that, we see Bruce working out as he sees the Joker's blimp, so after that he decides to suit up. Superman's already there, as he's already at the distress signal. We see a tiny boat as it blows up next to a big boat, and the water starts making its way in. But Batman goes to where the Joker is, as a robot comes in with a laser, and that's how the episode ends. This episode's pretty fucking good too. Not as good as the first part, but it's definitely the second best episode of the show. Alright, let's finish off this three-parter. We go back to the boat with Superman as he's trying to stop the water leak, and he manages to do so, and then as that's going on, Batman's using his jetpack to avoid lasers from the robot Lex made. The lasers end up hitting his jetpack, so now he has to try and grapple away as the robot's chasing him down. Batman ends up at the Daily Planet as Lois is in the building, so now he has to try and help her as the robot's hunting him down. So whilst he's with Lois, he asks how to contact Superman and ends up putting Lois somewhere safe, and told her to stay there as he's dealing with the one robot. Batman's cape gets caught in a printing machine, so Lois sees that Bruce is Batman, and that gives him the chance to put the robot in the printing machine. But it's still alive as Superman comes in and destroys the robot. Right after that, Lois is helping Bruce with the wound as she's pissed off about the fact that he's Batman and that she can't tell anyone about it either. So obviously she really does care about Bruce, but Superman comes up and says that she's taking it well. They discuss that the robot's from Lex and that they could possibly prove that, so Superman and Batman have to team up to sort out the Joker and Lex. Speaking about them, we see them as Lex brings the Joker to his building as Lex wants the kryptonite from them as Lex is trying to make them take the fall for them. But Harley and the Joker end up setting up Lex by not putting the kryptonite in the bag as Harley ends up taking the giant plane from Lex's building. They take Lex hostage by taping him to one of the seats on the plane as Superman and Batman come to stop them. They get into the building where the Joker sends giant robots on them as the Joker's taking off. Batman and Superman are busy with the robots as the plane takes off, so they have to make quick work of the robots besides from the one that Mercy is taped onto, so now they have to save her before they destroy the robot, which they manage to do so. Mercy tells them where Lex is, and one last robot comes out as Superman tells Batman to go after the Joker, and Superman stays to deal with the robot. The Joker's going nuts in Metropolis, destroying LexCorp and many other buildings as Batman approaches trying to get close enough to him so he can get on the plane. Batman manages to do so, and as that's going on, Superman's struggling with the robot as it has kryptonite taped to it, but ends up beating it as he uses one of the lead-lined doors to block the kryptonite from affecting him. Batman gets on the plane and starts to fight the Joker as Harley now has to fly the plane but almost crashes it as Superman ends up saving it. Batman manages to knock the marble bombs from Joker's hands as Batman saves Harley and Superman saves Lex. The Joker tries to escape but is stuck in the plane as he laughs as the plane explodes. Also, I fucking love this line.
At this point, he probably is.
The three-parter ends with Bruce talking to Lois as she says goodbye to him, and even Clark comes to talk to him as Bruce says that Lois is all his now. But he has to be good to her, otherwise he knows where he lives. Hell yeah. I'm just glad that I'm watching episodes that aren't just good, but really fucking good. I think all the compliments of the first part apply to all three parts of these episodes, but they're mainly just ranked on how much I enjoy them on their own. So you know what? This is above the second part, but below the first. Well, kind of, but the episode starts with Lois Lane trying to get into the wreckage from the last Bizarro episode, but Superman comes in as they're talking to one of the guards. Superman tells her that there's nothing in there as he's already checked, and they talk about how Bizarro possibly died. We then see Bizarro walking in the snow as he looks himself in a lake, and then he walks into a building with a bunch of skiers inside. They run away, and as he walks through the wall, Bizarro watches a news report of Star Labs where they find out that he could possibly go home. Right after that, he finds a Fortress of Solitude after hearing something in his ear, as he then uses Clark's alien device to talk to Brainiac to find out about Krypton. Brainiac thinks that he is Superman, so he tells Bizarro that he's Kal-El, but whilst that's going on, Superman arrives to see what's going on. Superman goes to the device to only find footprints in front of the device where he gets the idea that it may be Bizarro, and whilst that's going on, Bizarro is wreaking havoc in Metropolis. What Bizarro is actually doing is he's trying to recreate Krypton in Metropolis by destroying buildings to make them look like what they would on Krypton, as he takes someone hostage to be his father. Turpin and the Commissioner try to confront Bizarro but fail, so Lewis just agrees with Bizarro to do what he wants, basically knowing that Superman will come, and she's right. Superman shows up and talks to Turpin and the Commissioner to explain what he might be doing, and after talking, Superman goes in to try and use Kryptonite against Bizarro, but it doesn't work. Superman then gets given the Kryptonite back from Bizarro while stuck under a bit of wreckage, and the dog he let out earlier rips his Kryptonite-proof suit, so now Superman's being weakened by the Kryptonite. Superman ends up moving the Kryptonite away, getting his powers back, and saving Lewis and the man just before the building collapses. Superman then goes after Bizarro to tell Turpin to get everyone underground, as he wants to destroy Metropolis to make Krypton. Superman catches up to Bizarro as he throws a missile towards Metropolis, and Superman tries to stop it as he has to fight Bizarro as well. Superman ends up convincing Bizarro to stop the missile as he mentions that Lewis would die if he lets the missile hit Metropolis, but instead of stopping the missile, he goes straight to Lewis as Superman stops the missile. Superman then tells Bizarro that he will show him what happened to Krypton after it exploded, and Superman takes Bizarro to another planet where he can do whatever he wants there. Honestly, a very average episode. Bizarro just turns into a poor man's General Zod, but not near as interesting as the first episode he was in. Goes above Double Dose but below action figures. This episode starts at Metropolis University as someone's trying to steal artifacts from the Department of Ideology. He accidentally drops one of the artifacts and finds a tablet inside as the text translates to English and says that "I am power beyond your dreams, call to me," as he then says the name at the end. When he does, his appearance changes to have green eyes and black skin with sharp claws. He runs away as a security guard comes and he asks for people to help him, and then he eventually turns into some random Cthulhu-like creature as he starts wreaking havoc in Metropolis. Superman of course comes to stop him, and as they fight, Lewis and Jimmy go to see what's going on, but lucky for them, Superman throws them into the Daily Planet with a car, then makes a force field around the whole building. Superman can't get through it, and even the next day the building's still reinforced around it as they're trying to find a way in where some random goth woman named Doris tells them that it's a spell, and explains that the creature named Karkal is the worst demon you can deal with, as they want to make everyone their servant beasts. Superman knows who to get help from as he ends up seeking Dr. Fate's help as Superman's weak against magic and doesn't know much about it. Superman talks to Fate as he doesn't want to help, and he says that he's retired as evil always comes back and he's sick of it. Superman keeps on trying to convince Fate to help as he can't do it on his own, and as Superman leaves, Dr. Fate's wife gives him something that might help against Karkal. As Superman leaves, Fate tells her that she sent him back to his grave, and she says why do you care as he's thinking about putting the mask back on again. We then see inside the Daily Planet as the whole place is completely changed, and now Karkal's letting out beasts to take over the people inside, and as that's going on, Superman finds a way in the force field with the device he was given from Fate's wife. All the people in the building turn into beasts as Superman walks in to stop Karkal. He's getting his ass kicked as he gets tied down. Dr. Fate comes in to stop Karkal. Dr. Fate recreates the artifact to stop him, but gets knocked out of his hands whilst he's trying to send Karkal back. So now Superman has to go get it and bring back up to Fate. Superman has a tablet in his hands as Fate reads out the spell to stop him and ends up working, as all the beasts go back into the tablet and everything was reset the way it was beforehand. Fate's injured, so Superman takes him back to his place, where Fate explains that he had to change a heart because Superman went back to stop Karkal even when he didn't have a chance. I'm mixed with this episode. There are some really cool things in it, such as Dr. Fate himself, as he's an awesome character, but also the villain's quite weak and it's just a boring character we've seen 1,000 times. But bringing Dr. Fate into the DC animated universe is definitely cool. Goes above Target but below Father's Day. Prototype starts off with Lex showing off a police force battle suit where he wants to sell off these Robocop looking suits to the government. The sergeant in the suit explains some of the features such as lasers, a grenade launcher, a jetpack, and even infrared eyesight and super strength. As they're showing off the suit, a fire breaks out as Lex convinces the commissioner to let the sergeant help out to show how useful the suit can be. Superman shows up to help, but as he does, the sergeant's there helping as well, as Superman actually seems happy to have someone helping him out. There are people on the roof as it's about to collapse, so they work together to save them all as the sergeant even managed to get rid of the fire. Superman's still suspicious that he might turn on him, but after that, the man that worked on the suit for Lex quits as Lex doesn't seem to care about the psychological issues that the suit may cause. The sergeant named Corey is having an argument with his partner as it seems that he's obsessed with the suit, as she wants to go on a holiday with him, and even later that night after the argument happens, he suits up to take people down where he seems to be too violent. It's to the point where he explodes a building as people are inside, but luckily they manage to escape, but not for long as Corey manages to catch up to their car and throw it into a pile of other cars, nearly killing them, as Superman comes in to stop Corey. The police soon come as the commissioner suspends Corey from the force and from using the suit as they see how violent he's becoming. But not long after that, Corey steals the suit as Superman talks to the ex-employee named John, the same man that designed the suit, to find out how to stop it. John tells Superman that he has a kill switch with the suit, and that's basically the only way to beat it. Corey then confronts Lex about how Superman's trying to stop him, and Lex puts a jammer in his back. As Lex thought he'd stopped him, Corey accidentally destroys the jammer when falling on the floor and tries to get Lex. As Corey's about to get Lex, Superman comes in to stop him. They fight for a bit, but eventually Corey blinds Superman with the lasers on his suit, so now Superman has to use his hearing to beat Corey and is struggling to do so. Superman then briefly gets back his sight to see a high voltage wire, so Superman holds it to try and stun Corey as he's holding onto him, but he then plugs one of the wires into his back where his suit completely stops. Corey's taken to the hospital where John talks to Superman, wondering why he designed the suit, but Superman reassures him that it's a good idea and that it needs to be done safely. I wonder if that will ever come back in the future. This episode's just yet another average episode. Honestly, kind of cool seeing a robotic suit that can compete with Superman, but it was just a very predictable kind of episode. Also, Corey's kind of a bad character. Just not interesting at all, and he's a fucking asshole. Goes above Double Dose, but below Bizarro's World. This episode starts with a funeral with Lois and Jimmy in attendance as Superman's watching from afar. We find out that the funeral was actually for Clark Kent, but we then flash back to Clark in a prison questioning a prisoner, as the prisoner says that he didn't do anything, and Clark believes him as his heartbeat stays consistent. Clark looks more into the case as Lois and Jimmy ask him for dinner, as Clark says that he can't as he wants to get to the bottom of it. Clark investigates the pizza place that was close to the prisoner's apartment, where he tries to find out if his alibi was legit, by finding out if he did order a pizza on the night of the murder. Clark ends up finding floppy disks of old customers from the pizza shop where he finds the order, which was apparently around the exact time of the murder that proved his innocence. As Clark is driving to the governor to prove his innocence, someone put a bomb in his car and it exploded, so now Clark has to get out without anyone seeing that he's Superman. He ends up doing so and says that Clark died in the explosion, but now the big problem is that he can't prove that the prisoner is innocent. Clark goes to his parents to talk about it, but they don't have any ideas on making sure that Clark survived the explosion. He then decides to be Clark one last time by going to see the governor, but as he goes back to his apartment, Lois is there looking for clues. Luckily, he's still Superman, but I really like this emotional moment where Lois feels bad for not telling him that she actually likes him. But a bomb was planted in his building as Lois and Superman have to get out fast, and as they do so, Superman sees Detective Bowman in the crowd looking suspicious. Lois then questions Bowman about all the coincidences, as he then tries to stop it, but Superman's listening to what's going on as he then saves Lois as she's about to be thrown off the stairs, and Bowman makes a run for the helicopter at the top of the building. Superman catches up to him but keeps getting shot at as he's finding it hard to get to the helicopter. Superman gets to the plane and eventually gets Bowman and hands him into the police, but Superman rushes off to the prison as the innocent prisoner is about to be put down. Superman saves him and the episode ends with Clark ringing Lois as he uses Lana's help to tell Lois that he's been there with Lana the whole time. Lois seems to be quite jealous that he went to Lana instead of her, but the episode ends with Bowman being put down as he realizes that Clark is Superman. This is a pretty good episode. The mystery in this episode is pretty good, but the best part is all the character stuff. Seeing how the characters react to Clark's death is what really makes the episode work, and I think it's one of the better episodes in the whole show. Goes above Ghost in the Machine, but below Speed Demons. I expect to hear some fucking Slayer or some shit in this episode, but I don't think we will. Anyways, Heavy Metal starts with the ex-employee named John that made the police suit, creating a full iron suit. And as that's going on, they overhear a news report as they see a robbery happen at the bank as someone karate chopped through the bank's wall. Right after that, we see robbers break into another bank, and hold on, is that Malcolm McDowell back again? Fuck yes, Metallo's back, baby! But the police then show up as Metallo quickly deals them, and as that's going on, John's testing one part of the suit by shooting targets. They then see the police getting messed up as the robbers are getting away, so John uses the weapon to stop the robbers in the truck, but as they shoot the weapon, it stops working. The robbers are about to shoot John, but then Superman comes out and helps him as they seem to be safe. Metallo comes out and fights Superman, as Superman's surprised that it's Metallo since the last time we saw him he was stuck in lava. They fight, and as they're fighting, Metallo points out that the people that fixed him have made him much stronger and even gave him laser vision. Metallo gets the upper hand and even almost kills him with kryptonite in his chest, and as he's about to kill Superman, John's nephew drives a car into Metallo and then drives away with John and Superman. But Metallo catches up pretty quickly after stealing a police car as they're trying to get away. Eventually they get away after a garbage truck gets in Metallo's way. As they're getting away, the truck runs out of gas, so they grab Superman and walk him back to his lab so they can use a light generator to help him recover. Metallo isn't far away as he's wreaking havoc near the lab because no one's going to tell him where Superman is. So John decides to use his metal suit to try and take on Metallo. He suits up and oh shit, I didn't even realize that this was meant to be the character Steel. Nah, not that shit. God, that movie's fucking awful. But he manages to quickly deal with two thugs as he then goes to take on Metallo. When he does, he ends up flying Metallo up into the sky, and after Metallo makes him crash, they end up at the warehouse where John has his lab. But as Metallo's going to hit Steel with his hammer, Superman comes in to help Steel, as they both take down Metallo together. Steel is the one to defeat Metallo by throwing his hammer into his chest through a wall. The episode ends with Superman saying thanks and shaking his hand. I actually fuck with this episode quite a bit. I like how the things John said in Prototype actually led up to something in the future of the show, and I think it works out very well. Also, having Metallo as the villain definitely helps in the episode quite a lot. Goes above Identity Crisis, but below Blast from the Past Part 1. Warrior Queen starts off with a female warrior named Maxima fighting some man in an arena as she gets her weapon knocked out of her hand, but she manages to win as she gets him on the ground and stand but doesn't kill him. Maxima wants an actual challenge, so whilst taking a bath, she's shown the good deeds that Superman's done as she wants him to be her husband. But the man Maxima fought before had intentionally made this plan so she'll leave him and Maxima's servant named Sazu as they will take over the planet they live on called Olmerac. Maxima arrives in Metropolis and kicks 4 guys' asses off their try and hit on her, and then she gets on the news station to try and get Superman, and she does. She seems to be a massive simp for Superman, but he says no to the whole ordeal as his home's on Earth, but after she gets rejected, she starts to fight Superman. Superman gets her tied up to a Metapole. She seems extra happy as Superman seems to be her equal, but Superman rejects her again, but Maxima knocks Superman out and takes him to Olmerac. When she gets back with Superman, the man from earlier is sitting on her throne with Sazu, as he orders the guards to take them away, and even sends Sazu with them to the catacombs. They get there and Maxima tries to kill Sazu, but Superman stops her from doing so, and as they're talking about some creature named the Karmarite, it comes out to fight them and knocks Sazu out. They manage to beat it by making its tentacles hit the end of the shield, so it gets knocked out from the electricity. The monster broke the shield, so they end up escaping, ended up taking the man out, and as she's about to kill him, Superman stops her from doing so as she says that she'll lock him up. Superman declines her offer to stay there with her, but she lets him go, and as he goes through a portal, fucking Lobo shows up, and now she's simping for Lobo. Honestly, a solid episode, just a fun, not very serious episode, and this is the first superpowered woman that isn't a villain in the show. Well, they kind of are, but it's honestly just a big surprise. Also, I really wonder how Maxima and Lobo would work out together. Would be quite strange to see. Goes above solar power, but below identity crisis. Alright, we get a two-parter and we start with the police cars escorting a van to some kind of facility, and hold on. Is that the same van from Fun and Games? Isn't it? It must be, but they open the doors to see lots of money in the back with Turpin coming out of the back of the van as well. But as they're in the facility, some machines break in and take the van as they leave, almost killing the commissioner, and as they're trying to escape, Superman comes to stop them. He gets hit by some kind of bomb, and then some high-frequency bomb that causes windows to break, and even causes Superman's ears, nose, and mouth to bleed. Right after that, we find out that it's Bruno that was behind all of this, as he then gets a call from Darkseid as he tells Bruno that he needs to be gone for more, and if he serves Darkseid well, he'll make Bruno a king. We then see Lois and Clark at a conference where Turpin tells everyone that they'll be on it, and as that happens, Orion crashes in saying that he must warn Superman as he then passes out. Superman goes to see Orion in Star Labs where he seems to be furious as he had to go through plenty of parademons to get to where he is now. He introduces himself as he warns Superman that Darkseid's coming to get him and that the Mother Box can explain it better. Orion then turns on the Mother Box where he explains that a world split in two. One was a perfect world called New Genesis and the other was Apocalypse, an absolute hell on Earth ruled by Darkseid. It then explains that they've been in constant war until they had a truce where the rulers from each planet traded suns. Since then, Darkseid has looked through galaxies to find the anti-life equation, a formula that would give him complete control of the universe, and he's destroyed planet after planet whilst trying to find it. Right after the explanation, they're already attacking the Air Force base as Superman and Orion go to stop Bruno's men. They take one of the machines down, and Darkseid confronts Bruno about this, where Bruno explains that it's Orion causing the trouble. Superman and Orion destroy the other machine as Darkseid tells Bruno that they need to go into phase 2 of their plan, which is taking on the power plant. Darkseid takes Bruno and the 3 parademons to the power plant where they have to take over it, and as that's going on, Orion explains that he is the son Darkseid gave up to the ruler of New Genesis. Orion then leaves to New Genesis to go tell the leaders what he's found, as he leaves Superman a little device to contact him when he needs Orion's help. We then see Bruno and the parademons set up a device at the power plant as Darkseid thanks him for setting up the device and then leaves him to die as he calls Bruno the king of fools for believing him. Bruno makes a run for it before the device goes off and eventually gets on a boat and just manages to avoid the explosion, and the episode ends as Superman sees the explosion going off. This is a solid first parter. There's still a lot more to see, especially more Darkseid actually doing things by himself, but I like how this episode sets him up to be a giant threat for Superman. Not a fan of Bruno, but hopefully we don't get to see him in the second part. Goes above Ghost in the Machine, but below the late Mr. Kent. Alright, straight into part 2, and we start at Star Labs where Superman finds out that the hole left from the power plant could possibly kill everyone on the planet, and basically turn it into Apocalypse 2.0. We then see Darkseid with Calibac on Apocalypse as Calibac wants to go back to Earth to stop Superman, but Darkseid instead decides to send Steppenwolf down to stop Superman. No, not the one from the live-action Justice League movie. This one basically just looks like an evil Robin Hood. We go back to Superman where he tries to contact Orion, but the device doesn't work as it was fried from the explosion from the power plant. As Superman's going to try and stop the effects from the explosion, Steppenwolf comes out to fight Superman. But first, Superman has to deal with a few parademons as Jimmy and Lois see this going on. Superman gets wounded from an electric trap that Steppenwolf throws at him. As Lois and Jimmy get to Superman, a bunch of parademons come out to stop Superman as he gets dogpiled by them. Superman manages to fight some of them off, and as he's fighting them, Turpin comes out the helicopter and shoots Steppenwolf off his flying bike. And even some officers shoot the parademons down with lasers. This gives Superman the time to go and stop the massive fire from the wreckage of the power plant. And he does it by using the ocean around the power plant by funneling heaps of water into the source. Superman then stops for a breather after getting rid of the fire, but Darkseid uses his Omega beams on Superman and he explains that he could just kill him right now and have Earth up under his heel. But if Superman joins him, Darkseid could restrain himself a little bit from destroying the planet. This moment goes so fucking hard though. But as Darkseid's confronting Superman, it looks like hell on Earth as the police are losing the battle and getting outnumbered. Even though they're outnumbered, Turpin's still fucking shit up and managing to take out quite a few parademons. But as he's doing that, a giant tank-like machine comes out with Superman held as a prisoner on top. Darkseid gives his speech about how he's going to rule the planet and make everyone his slaves, and even Lex is watching this report. But Turpin manages to get one of the parademons' weapons and throws it at Superman as he ends up getting Superman free. As Superman's going to take on Darkseid, people from New Genesis come out as Orion tells Darkseid that if he destroys Earth anymore, it breaks the treaty that they've signed as the planet is under their protection. Darkseid then leaves the planet, and as he's leaving, he uses his Omega beams on Turpin. Superman tries to get him, but can't as the portal closes on him. And damn, Superman got fucking mad, and honestly, it's great as it shows Superman really cares about everyone. The episode ends with Turpin's funeral as the last person waiting at his grave is Superman, and damn, this speech at the end kinda hits me in the feels. Didn't expect that at all. Honestly, halfway through this episode, I was expecting to be similar quality to the first part, but nah, this part is so much better and much more interesting. Seeing Darkseid fuck up Superman is great of course, and then to see how much Superman reacted to Turpin's death is honestly fantastic. It's probably one of the best moments in the show yet. We haven't seen anything this emotional or high stakes in the show yet, so finally seeing it now makes it hit so much harder, especially after most of the episodes just being average. This part is lots better, but it goes above Brave New Metropolis but below World's Finest Part 2. Little Lost Girl is another two-parter, but we start with Clark on his spaceship as he goes back to where Krypton once was, as he hears a distress signal at the end of Krypton's solar system. He goes to it to find a planet where we see an old lost civilization, so Clark decides to land at the planet to find out what the distress signal is for. He wanders around for a bit to find some kind of lab underground with a glowing light in the middle of the lab. As Clark walks near the light, it turns into a projection where they say that they're Carla and Z, the chief physician of Argo City, and that their planet was thriving until Krypton blew up, as it affected their planet as well. She explains that she put herself in a machine as a last resort to save her family, and Superman then finds the device as only one of them hasn't been destroyed, and that's the one that still has someone inside that doesn't look dead. Clark takes her back to Earth and takes her to Smallville where she learns that Earth's sun has the same effects on her too, as they do with Clark. Her name is Kara and she explains that she wants to help people down here, but Clark tells her that she has to wait a bit before going out to help people, and that she needs a little bit of time to get used to things. We then cut to Metropolis where Lois and Jimmy are at some kind of convention as two people break in with future tech guns blazing. They end up stealing some things, and is that Scott Menville's voice?
Let's go!
Holy shit, it is! It's the voice of Robin in Teen Titans, and also the most annoying Call of Duty Zombies character, Marlton. If you know, you know. Anywho, as they're escaping, Superman comes to stop them, but has trouble dealing with their lasers. He ends up dealing with the male one by making them freeze from their own laser, and after the female one frees him, they get away as Superman has to save Lois. As they go back to the lab, we see Granny Goodness as their boss, which is someone that works for Darkseid, but we briefly saw them when the Mother Box is explaining Apocalypse. She comes out to tell them that they need to not argue with one another and threatens them with the device that she has in her hand, so they agree to not quarrel with one another. We then see Kara as she visits Clark, but Clark tells her to stop trying to help her and that she should wait for him in his apartment before she leaves, so she overhears Lois and Jimmy as he says that they have a leftover game token, so now Jimmy's gonna go look for which arcade it's meant to be at. As Jimmy's going, Kara ends up convincing him to let her go help look for the arcade. As they go look through a few of them in Metropolis, they eventually find the arcade that the tokens are from, where Kara sees the two that broke into the convention with trench coats on. She uses her X-ray vision to see that they have their suits on underneath. As Jimmy and Kara follow them behind, we see where they're going. They end up finding out where they went as they go into the room, where they end up getting caught, but Jimmy says that they found the place and that they wanted to join. Granny explains that she only takes people that are abandoned and rough-skinned, as they don't look like those kind of people she would take in, but she said that she can fix that. So Kara rips off her normal clothes to reveal that she's Supergirl as she takes on the goons and then ends up going to take Granny on, but she opens up a boom tube to Apocalypse as she brings people from Apocalypse to help her out, and that's how the first part ends. It's a solid episode, but to see basically Darkseid's bitch be the new villain after the two-parter where Darkseid was the villain is quite disappointing. But I will say it's cool to see Supergirl in the show now. Definitely not the best episode, but it was alright. Goes above Bizarre as well, but below Action Figures. Part 2 picks right up from the end of the first part, where Supergirl has to fight 3 people apparently called the Female Furies that Granny brought from Apocalypse. She manages to do well against them, but Jimmy convinces the two at the start of the first episode to help him as Supergirl's probably going to die fighting the female Furies. As Supergirl's fighting them, we see Lois and Clark in the conference as Clark sees what's going on and quickly suits up to help her. He gets there and gets his ass kicked as Supergirl is under rubble. They take Superman to Apokolips, where he becomes their prisoner as Granny's waiting to give Superman to Darkseid. Kara ends up finding a boom tube and goes through it to Apokolips to save Superman. She arrives but has no idea where she's going and she manages to catch the attention of a few parademons. Whilst that's going on, Jimmy's talking to a female named Amy as she explains what Granny was up to and she mentions a room that she kept locked. So they break in to see some kind of giant device. As Jimmy and Amy find that, we go back to Apokolips where Kara ends up losing the boom tube device, but after losing the parademons, she sees Superman being taken as prisoner to see Darkseid. Superman sees Darkseid as he explains that if a comet destroys Earth, then it won't be his fault. And then when that's found out, we find out that the device Granny made was made to lure the comet to Earth to potentially destroy it. Darkseid then explains that in an hour, Earth would be destroyed, so Supergirl tries to stop Darkseid but fails as she gets hit with Darkseid's Omega beams. But then a fight ensues where she manages to take out the female Furies and then free Superman as they steal a boom tube device and go back to Metropolis. Supergirl destroys the device, but now Superman has to push a comet out of the way instead of using the device to push it away. As Superman's pushing it away, it splits into two where Supergirl ends up destroying the other half in the sky where it doesn't hurt anyone. The episode ends with the Furies punishing Granny for a failure, and Supergirl's on the front of the dead planet as Jimmy got his story on the front page and Supergirl's flying by as they're talking about her. Honestly, this part's much better, especially seeing them actually being taken to Apokolips where they have to fight off Granny and the Furies to try and escape Darkseid. Still nothing amazing, but much better and much more interesting than the first part. Goes above Solar Power but below Warrior Queen. This season really had its ups and downs, didn't it? We got to see some of the best episodes and some of the worst episodes in the whole show, but also got quite a lot of average episodes. Funnily enough, the best 3 episodes in the show is basically just Batman the Animated Series episodes, but with Superman and Lex Luthor. But even then, Apokolips Now Part 2 is almost as good as those episodes, so even without those 3, we'd still get some great episodes in this season. Just unfortunate that episodes like Monkey Fun and especially the Promethean really weigh this season down. Just gotta hope that this show ends strong with a really good season 3. Alright, first episode of the last season of the show. Let's see how this goes. We start on the docks as rich people are waiting to go onto the boat, and one woman comes up trying to seduce a boat guard, and it actually works. She gets on as we see Clark and Jimmy looking around the place, and then she wanders off to the toilet where we see that she has fire abilities as she melts the door handle. She then sets the place ablaze as everyone has to evacuate as we get, honestly, a really good transition from Clark to Superman. I like it a lot, it just looks really neat. But Superman goes to confront her as she knocks him back with fire and leaves, so now Superman has to stop the fire and he does so. Clark goes to the boat later that night to investigate and the bodyguard tells him to leave with some random excuses, but he ends up leaving as he ends up getting followed by someone. Clark ends up losing him as he goes into a phone booth and then goes into a secret base. We find out that the woman's name is Volcana as she's talking to someone named Donnie as she's saying that she needs to get out of town. As Donnie gets off the phone with her, he gets confronted by 3 men as they ask him where the usual place is. The next day we see Clark at a facility where scientists are giving kids abilities such as telekinesis, where Clark tries to find out more about what's going on and even questions the scientists about someone possibly having hydrokinesis abilities, and as he does, he says that the meeting's over. Right after he leaves, he gets told that he needs to get into a car with 2 men in suits, but as he does, the tires pop and he makes a run for it where he ends up accidentally running into Clark. Clark says he will take him somewhere safe if he gives him the answers he wants. He ends up agreeing and then tells Clark that a decade ago a teenage girl came in with her abilities, but the government took her away from them and used her as a weapon called Volcana. Clark has to leave as he senses Volcana causing more havoc, so he comes up with an excuse to leave and then suits up to deal with her. Superman tries to stop her by convincing her to listen to him, but it doesn't work as she attacks him and eventually flies away. She goes to meet Donnie but runs into the man that was with Donnie named Kurt, as they apparently have some history. Kurt ends up taking her as he has his men use fire extinguishers on her, and as that's going on, Clark overhears Lois and Jimmy talking about the supposed fire in a hotel, but the firemen said there was no fire. So he suits up again to find out where Volcana is. He interrogates a man and damn, Superman has a bit of a nerve sometimes and it's honestly great. Right after that we see Kurt as he has Volcana in a tank with only enough oxygen to live in the tank, as Superman comes to stop Kurt. Superman manages to free Volcana as she causes a lot of fire and makes everyone evacuate. She goes after Kurt and as she's about to kill him, Superman confronts her, but she lights up and accidentally causes a massive explosion that almost kills her. Superman takes her to an island where she can live her days in paradise, and honestly this is just an average episode. Volcana's an interesting character, but they really could have dived more into the fact that she didn't have a proper childhood and used that to be quite an emotional episode, but unfortunately they didn't. Not that bad, but we've got to see where it stacks up against the other episodes later on. Nighttime starts off with Roxy Rocket. It really is her from the episode The Ultimate Thrill and the New Adventures of Batman, and this episode was aired about a month after that episode by the way. So Superman manages to deal with her quite quickly by just grabbing her off the rocket, and when he does, he questions why she would be so dumb to do the things that she does in Metropolis. She explains that Batman isn't around at the moment, so she just thought why not go to Metropolis. Clark is surprised about this, as this is the first time he's hearing about Batman being missing. Right after that, we see Robin as he takes out a few thugs as they're robbing a jewelry store, and as Robin gets two guns pulled on him, Superman shows up. Superman asks Robin where Batman is. Robin lies and says that he's been around, but Superman just gets him by asking where's Bruce, basically telling Robin that he knows that Bruce is Batman. Robin explains that he only got a phone call from Bruce saying that he's going on an extended business trip and they haven't seen him in ages, but as he's talking about Bruce, Robin sees the bat signal. He explains that it gets worse every night that Batman doesn't show up, so Superman says that Batman will show up tonight, and they do that by getting Clark to wear the bat suit. They then go to talk to the Commissioner, as Gordon tells them that Bane just got off a plane and they think that he's up to no good. Superman and Robin go to Wayne Enterprises, and I love this moment.
So how'd you do Batman's voice?
Precise muscle control.
Plus, I have a pretty good ear. Don't do that again.
It's honestly great and explains why Superman can do such good quote-unquote impressions of Bruce. They sneak in the building so Robin can show Superman the video that he received from Bruce as he's acting suspicious, and Superman finds out that one of the papers has microscopic nanites on them, and even the phone has them on it, as well as a needle that injected nanites into his ear, so Bruce is basically being mind controlled. Superman and Robin interrogate the Penguin to find out where Bane is, as they might have something to do with this. They find out where they are, so Superman busts in with Robin to see Bane, the Riddler, and Mad Hatter. The Riddler overpowers Robin and puts him in a cage, as Bane beats Superman up whilst the Riddler puts a restraint on Superman, and then Bane crushes Superman with a giant Easter Island head. But as they think that they've killed Batman, obviously Superman in disguise, he kicks the statue away from him and then breaks out of his restraints to beat the shit out of Bane, as Robin manages to tie the Riddler to the cage and lift him up. The Mad Hatter makes a run for it as Superman quickly catches up to him, and then ends up getting the Mad Hatter to explain what the nanites are, but he doesn't know who made them. He thinks it might possibly be alien tech, but Superman and Robin investigate the video more to find out that he might be at Wayne Air Station, so they go to find Bruce. They get there to see Bruce as they're about to launch a Kryptonian ship, and then Brainiac comes out as he says he's about to kill Bruce. Superman comes in as Batman to stop Brainiac as he believes that he is Batman. Brainiac burns the Batsuit off Superman to reveal that he is Superman, and as Brainiac's about to take off, Superman goes to catch up to him and eventually takes him down by destroying the ship that's leaving Earth. Bruce then regains control of himself as Superman's there and says that Bruce sure knows how to pick a partner. God, I was excited to watch this episode again, and I'm glad I got to. It's always been a great episode, and it still is. It's an interesting dynamic having Superman work with Robin to find out what happened to Bruce. Glad that they did because it resulted in an absolutely great episode. Easily beats the last episode. We start this episode in the year 2979 AD, where we see Brainiac as he breaks into a place and overrides some machinery to go through a portal. A man gets a few superheroes named Chameleon Boy, Cosmic Boy, and Saturn Girl to help him stop Brainiac, as he seems to have gone back in time as the people from the future arrive in Smallville. Also, to be honest, those names are fucking lame. We find out that they went back in time to where Clark was in high school and was still dating Lena, and bruh. Scott Menville's back again, but how is he voicing this random jock? But the jock challenges Clark into a one-on-one basketball game where Clark kicks his ass in basketball. Lena gets pissed off as he wanted to show off how strong he is, but he's then attacked by Brainiac, and as Brainiac's attacking Clark, the three superheroes from the future show up to help him. They fight for a bit and Brainiac ends up getting away, so the three superheroes explain to Clark that Brainiac's after him and wants to kill Clark before he becomes Superman, and completely alter the timeline by doing so. So Cosmic Girl shows that Superman's basically a god to them, and that without them, they wouldn't have their future, so let me be honest here, this just leaves a lot of plot holes with the earlier episodes in the show. Clark has no fucking idea who he is until eventually learning more about him after meeting him. So after that, Brainiac's trying to find Clark and ends up questioning the jock that Clark played one-on-one against to find out where Clark lives. Brainiac gets the answer out of him after beating him up, and now Brainiac knows where Clark lives as he then tries to attack him at his house. Clark, Lena, and his family hide inside the basement as Brainiac's searching for the house for him, but Clark leaves the basement to try and stop Brainiac. Clark takes out a drone and then gets spotted as Brainiac tries to kill Clark by using the farming equipment against him, and as Brainiac's about to kill Clark, his parents come out and shoot Brainiac with a shotgun. That gives Clark the time to destroy the farm equipment and then face off against Brainiac, but the three superheroes then take over but get blown up as Brainiac grabs Clark, and he ends up beating him by pressing a button on his belt that transports Brainiac to the sun as he melts to death. Cosmic Girl wipes everyone's memories, including Clark's, and the episode ends with Clark putting on the glasses he was given earlier from Cosmic Girl as Lena approaches him. This episode's okay. As I said before, my biggest gripe with the episode is the plot holes it leaves behind, but it just lazily covers that by making everyone forget what happened. That's also the thing. Did Cosmic Girl make Clark forget who Brainiac is? I assume so, and that alone caused him a lot of trouble later on, but also how did Brainiac know that his memory was wiped? Whatever, I can't be bothered anymore. As the episode goes itself, it's an interesting idea to explore where a villain of Superman's teleports back in time to kill Clark before he becomes Superman, but it's just done in a decent effort. Bottom of the list. Alright, so Obsession starts with a swimwear fashion show that Lane is hosting as Clark and Jimmy are taking photos and reporting on the fashion show. As a woman named Darcy Mason walks out, a boat arrives at shore as some men come in and knock out the security guards and eventually go for Darcy. As they do, Superman approaches and kicks the shit out of them as they seem to be robots, but one of the robots takes Darcy as Superman then manages to save her. Clark's suspicious about Darcy not knowing anything about this as he thinks that she might know more than what she's saying that she knows. But right after that we find out that it's the Toyman that's been obsessed with her. Bro, no way the Toyman's back. It's been forever. Well, since the 4th episode of the show. But one of Toyman's robots comes back with his head off as he breaks the news to Toyman, but he has a jacket of hers as he sniffs it. Damn, Toyman's a fucking simp to the extreme. But as he sniffs it, a key falls out of the pocket, and it's a key for her apartment. We then see Clark as he knocks on her door and uses his X-ray vision, but he can't find her. Eventually he gets in and finds nothing in the house, but Darcy walks in as he's snooping around. Clark ends up questioning her, but as he does, a giant toy kangaroo comes in and ends up knocking Clark out of the window, but as the kangaroo is about to take Darcy, Superman comes in to stop it. Superman ends up stopping it, as right after that we find out that Darcy's a robot as Lena ends up seeing her trying to fix her own face. Honestly, a pretty good twist, but Lena confronts her as she ends up admitting that she was meant to be Toyman's partner, but she doesn't want to be with him as he just kept her in the factory, but she wants to go out and live life. Darcy ends up attacking Lena, but after she does that, she wants to end Toyman, but eventually the whole place is up in flames as Darcy ends up leaving, but Lena's stuck in the building. Lucky enough for her, Superman gets there in time and saves her, where she tells Superman everything that she found out. Right after that, Darcy breaks into Toyman's factory as she wants to kill him, but actually can't because of her programming. Her program stops her from doing so, but Toyman ends up getting her, as he's going to change her programming to make her love him. Superman then arrives to see Darcy in a toy box as Toyman sets up a fight for the new toy that he's made. Superman fights him but gets his ass kicked until he ends up figuring out the toy's moves and ends up countering them. Superman ends up being the toy as he's forced against the force field wall as Toyman leaves with Darcy. Superman ends up chasing after them as the force field breaks, but Darcy ends up breaking the helicopter as it goes up in flames. But the episode ends with Darcy going onto a train. You know what? I actually really like this episode. The best thing about it is the twist that Darcy's actually a robot, but it's a very solid episode overall. It goes above Where's the Smoke, but below Nighttime. Little Big Hand Man starts with Bizarro on his new planet as he made a rock city and ends up creating scenarios where he has to save the rock people. He ends up going to his own version of the Fortress of Solitude where he ends up running into Mr. Mixapleak. No fucking way Gilbert's back. Yes. But basically he convinces Bizarro to get revenge on Superman by making him think that Superman wanted Bizarro gone just because he was jealous of Bizarro's power. It works as Mixapleak teleports him into Metropolis as Bizarro is trying to get to Superman where Mixapleak directs Bizarro to the Daily Planet where he finds Lois. Bizarro knocks Clark out of a window where he ends up suiting up to try and talk to Bizarro, but he ain't talking and just puts up a fight instead. Mixapleak reveals himself to Superman to tell him that he intentionally got Bizarro riled up as he promised that he wouldn't bother Superman again. So he got Bizarro to do it instead. Mixapleak's wife shows up telling him that he's breaking many different tribunal rules, and as he shrugs her off, he gets transported to the leaders as he gets sentenced to live on Earth for 90 days without his powers. He gets teleported back to Earth where Superman and Bizarro are still fighting as Superman's trying to convince him that Mixapleak played Bizarro for a fool. After Bizarro ends up defeating Superman, he accidentally runs into Mixapleak where he asks to send him back, but obviously can't do so as Bizarro throws him. Right after that, he gets shot by the police and Superman ends up saving him as the police are about to kill him, so Superman knocks Bizarro out. He finds Mixapleak where he tells Superman that he doesn't have powers for 3 months, and that he has to do a good deed to get them back, so Superman gets Mixapleak to go with Bizarro to his planet as he's going to be there for 3 months instead. Not as good as the first episode Mixie's Spitleak is in, but it's still a solid episode. Honestly, Bizarro holds it back, but to see Mixie's Spitleak powerless is quite interesting. Goes above Obsession, but below Nighttime. So we start in Clark's ship as he's flying by a black hole where he shoots a device into it to find out where it ends up. But as he is, there's another ship in there as it's being sucked up by the black hole. So Superman goes in to save them and ends up doing so and taking them back to where they came from. But as Superman goes into the ship, they all run away as they think he's one of them. Superman then ends up getting shot by some planes as they seem to be the people that they're running away from. He ends up destroying the planes as he questions the people inside about what's going on. As he's about to question them, officers surround him as he ends up seeing Marla as she tells him the whole fire and says that this is the new Krypton. Superman talks to Marla as Jaxo is with them, but she explains that they got lucky to get out of the Phantom Zone because 2 meteors tore a hole through the Phantom Zone where they could escape. But they were in space and couldn't breathe, where a ship saved them. They ended up on this planet. So Marla and Jaxo actually took over the planet, and the general of their army comes in and almost fucking Sig hails. Yeah, I want to pretend that didn't happen. Jaxo explains that they brought order to the planet as they seem to be in chaos beforehand, but now they seem to be an officially running society. Jaxo then directs Superman to his ship, and as he does, Superman sees the woman from before as she knocks out a guard. Superman ends up talking to her to explain that they aren't barbarians, that Jaxo just says that they are, so she begs Superman to fight them, but Superman declines it as it would cause a lot of damage. She then goes to show Superman something as she takes him to a factory that's manufacturing giant ships so they can eventually take over other planets, but they then find out that they're all targeted to Earth. As Superman finds that out, Marlo and Juxo find them and quickly knocks out Superman. They end up attaching the woman and Superman to a missile directed towards the black hole, as the whole ship ends up being directed towards the black hole, so Marlo and Juxo have to fix it. The General ends up freeing the two from the missiles. As he and the woman leave on an escape pod, Superman goes to deal with Marlo and Juxo. Superman gets his ass kicked for a little bit until he makes them fall into the black hole as he manages to get into an escape pod and go back to their planet where he gets his ship and goes back home. Honestly, this episode is just extremely forgettable. It's a cool idea to have Marlo and Juxo recreate Krypton, but then again, it's a very basic and bland plot for an episode of this show. Not bad, but nothing special. Goes above New Kids in Town, but below Where's the Smoke. Alright, I'm so fucking keen to get into an episode with Green Lantern in it. So let's see how this goes. Start with Jimmy reading a comic from his friend named Kyle Rayner. Ah, so this is the Green Lantern we're getting? Alright. But Jimmy's reading Kyle's comic as he gets rejected from different comic book companies. But as they're talking about that, a thief steals Jimmy's camera, but luckily Kyle manages to get the camera back after hitting the thief with a bottle. The thief tries to stab him but ends up unarming him and knocking him out with a dish tray, as Jimmy takes a photo for him for the paper, but unfortunately doesn't get the story in the paper. Right after that, Clark and Lois are watching a space launch as they try to land, but failed the landing and are crashing into Earth's atmosphere. So Clark manages to suit up and save them. We then see a Green Lantern crash onto Earth, and as they're dying, he uses his last ounce of strength to make the ring choose someone. The ring ends up going to the Daily Planet as Kyle accidentally bumps into it and takes it as he puts it on and transforms into a Green Lantern. That's a big question though. If Kyle didn't bump into that, who would have been transformed into a Green Lantern? Anywho, Perry calls out for him as he transforms, but when he comes in, Kyle manages to get the suit off. After that, Superman finds the crash site where he sees the alien right before he dies, and he says that the Green Lantern needs your help. He fades away and dies right after that, so Sinestro comes looking for the ring. Superman tells him that he doesn't know where it is as he gets attacked by Sinestro. Also, why is Sinestro dressed up in blue when he's wearing the yellow lantern ring? It's just one thing that makes absolutely no sense, unless he has a comic book appearance where his suit is blue when he's wearing the yellow ring. Aside from that, it doesn't make much sense since Green Lanterns, when they put on the green ring, they have a green costume. Anyways, Superman gets his ass kicked as Sinestro says that he'll find the ring, so he flies away where the lantern the alien had comes back as Superman approaches it. The lanterns take him to the Guardians where they say that their worst fears came true as one of their Green Lanterns are dead. As that's going on, Kyle's having issues with his ring as it keeps transforming him, but he ends up saving the girl as she's about to get hit by a car and seems to be getting an idea of what the ring can do as he figures out how to save the man in the truck before it explodes and stops the fire. Sinestro then shows up demanding the ring, so he then fights Kyle for a bit and he seems to be doing pretty well with that ring. They keep fighting as we go back to the Guardians with Superman as they explain that they pick one person for every planet to be a Green Lantern, and that Sinestro was a Green Lantern until he took the ring away from him. So as Sinestro had no ring, he decided to go to the yellow ring instead as he wants to destroy all the Green Lantern rings. The Guardians then ask Superman to help the Green Lantern to stop Sinestro, so then as Sinestro's about to kill Kyle after losing his power, Superman comes in and saves him. Superman takes him away and gives Kyle the lantern so he can recharge, and he figures it out and even figures out the whole speech after hearing the Guardians say it. Kyle and Sinestro fight after Superman deals with Superman, and Kyle ends up giving Sinestro the ring and fakes him out by using his willpower so it blows up in his hand. Kyle ends up kicking the shit out of Sinestro and destroying his yellow lantern ring. The Guardians then talk to Kyle as he has to go to the planet Owa to help them. This episode's alright, but it definitely has its issues. My biggest gripe with this episode is that Kyle gets the ring and seems to understand how to use it almost straight away. It doesn't make sense how this normal guy completely understands how to use the ring, the word go, when unintentionally using it. They could have really developed it where he got to learn what the ring is and the capabilities of the ring. I guess they didn't have time for that in a 22-minute long episode, but that begs the question. Why not make it a two-parter as it would work a lot better and not feel as rushed as it does in this episode? Honestly, kind of disappointing as Green Lantern's one of my favorite superheroes, but it goes above Obsession but below Little Big Head Man. Superman's pal starts with Jimmy and Clark at the Daily Planet as Jimmy says the new intern Tina with a lot of jewelry is too good for him. Clark tells Jimmy just to ask her out, but Jimmy tells him that he's already done that twice, but she just comes up with the excuses not to go out with him. As that's going on, we see a car chase on TV. Clark suits up and manages to catch up to the car, but as that's happening, one of the news helicopters crashes, but Superman manages to save it just in time. Of course, right after that, the bridge that the helicopter hit is about to collapse, so now Superman has to stop the bridge from collapsing. He does so, and then Angela from Channel 3 gets an interview with Jimmy after being rejected from Superman as she realizes that Jimmy seems to be pals with Superman. Clark, Lois, and Tina are watching the interview as Jimmy sneaks by to the elevator. Tina walks in, then asks Jimmy out the same night, and everyone seems to recognize Jimmy as Superman's pal. Jimmy then goes out with Tina to dinner, and as they're walking out of the restaurant, they're about to get jumped, but Jimmy runs away as there's 4 of them. Eventually he's cornered as Superman comes out and quickly stops them, but Superman clarifies to Jimmy that he better clear up this pal stuff. The next day, Jimmy tries to get the story pulled by confronting Angela, but she just ignores him, and right after that, we get a montage of people trying to ask for favors from Jimmy as everyone sees him as Superman's friend. Eventually, Tina picks up Jimmy where he tells her that they aren't pals, and what Superman did for Jimmy, he'll do for anyone. They end up going to a junkyard where she takes him to fucking Metallo. Well, I definitely didn't expect that. Basically, Tina's Metallo's partner and sets Jimmy up to where Metallo's going to kill Jimmy with the trash compactor, so Superman comes for him. He eventually does after Tina rings Lois to say that they're being held hostage, and as Superman shows up, he gets a bus dropped on him. Metallo comes out and weakens him with kryptonite as Jimmy escapes and eventually traps Tina in a cupboard. Jimmy helps Superman by using a giant magnet and eventually traps Metallo in the trash compactor as he manages to escape. Jimmy finds some battery acid and throws up Metallo as it melts him, and the kryptonite in his chest falls into the trash compactor. The episode ends with Superman talking to Jimmy where he gives him the watch that he can contact him from anywhere in the city as he says that they're friends. I will say that seeing Metallo again for the 5th time was a surprise, but the twist with Tina wasn't a surprise. She was suspicious from the word go. Anywho, goes above Where's the Smoke but below Obsession. We start this episode as Lois and Jimmy are on Bibbo's boat as they're looking at the sea life until killer whales bump into their boats where it starts to leak. They keep bumping into the boat acting very weirdly as Jimmy uses his watch to contact Superman. He shows up and stops the killer whales by making them accidentally hit each other. Superman pulls the boat out of the water as we then go to the aquarium as Lois questions a professor named Cardi about the behaviour from the whales. He says it might have to do with them protecting their young ones, but he then quickly leaves as he gets Paige, but we then see Lex talking to the professor as Lois and Jimmy drive away. He mentions that they know what's happening as Lois is spying on them and eventually walks into a lab where they find Aquaman trapped. Cardi walks in and pulls a gun on Lois and eventually tie both Aquaman and Lois up to take them away in a LexCorp truck. Whilst in the truck, Lois questions Aquaman about who he is. He says that people are going to cause the death of millions in Atlantis with Lex's bombs that he's set up. But as this going on, Lex orders Cardi to kill them both, as having Lois there is basically a guarantee that Superman will come. But instead he got captured, and as that's going on, Jimmy tells Clark what's going on. Aquaman and Lois are on a boat. As they're about to get shot, Aquaman gets birds to attack them, and eventually he frees him and Lois from the restraints as they take him out and escape on a bike. They're getting chased down as they're trying to escape, and eventually they do so as Aquaman makes them drive off a cliff, as he takes Lois to the bomb site by using a shark to take her down there. Superman stops the guys that were chasing them and soon follows them and eventually grabs her out of the water as he sees Aquaman as he's going away. Superman and Lois then confront Lex as he tells him to stop the test as it will cause millions of lives to be lost. But we then see Aquaman trying to stop it as Superman comes to help him. As they're trying to stop the bomb, Lex orders Lois to leave as Aquaman comes to save her. He then gets a giant Atlantean ship to come out of the water to basically shoot Lex's boat down. But Superman tells him to stop as he's already disarmed the bombs, and that if he tries to kill Lex, Superman will stop him. Aquaman then goes to leave, but one of Lex's men shoots Aquaman, so they then fire on the ship as Lex and Mercy escape in a helicopter. Aquaman then tells Superman to tell everyone to respect the seas or you'll come back and finish what you started. Damn, Aquaman's a fucking asshole. Well, they end up leaving as Superman and Lois fly away. This might be controversial, but Aquaman is honestly a boring character. He is not interesting in the slightest in this episode, and it's extremely straightforward, but not in a good way. As the whole episode goes though, it's alright. It's a very basic plot for an episode with Aquaman in it where Lex is potentially going to cause damage to Atlantis, so they have to stop Lex. Goes above absolute power, but below Where's the Smoke. Unity starts with Kara waking up as her spring break started. She runs off to go to Metropolis, but as her, John and Martha are waiting on the bus, a bloke named Owen gives her comics as she reluctantly takes them. The bus arrives where they run into a very weird character before getting on the bus, and she sees that guy talking to John and Martha as she's driving away. She gets to Metropolis where she's staying with Clark as she writes her parents a letter talking about what she's been up to, and even shows a fight where Supergirl took down Volcana. It seems that she's already gone back to Metropolis as she's hating the bus ride back home. She just gets off and runs home instead to find no one at their house besides the cat. John and Martha come out where they seem to be acting weirdly, but they drive her to a place where she runs into the same man from the bus stop as he introduces himself as the Reverend Amos Hale. He travels around and spreads the word of Unity, as apparently everyone's embraced the Unity. We then find out that it's a giant octopus-like creature mind-controlling everyone, and making everyone from Smallville basically alien zombies. We find out that it's an alien that actually takes over planets, as Kara takes Martha to Star Labs to find out what this alien thing actually is. Superman and Supergirl are there as they find out that there's some alien parasite wrapped around her brain, and she wakes up and begs for help. Supergirl wants to go back and help them all, but Superman says to wait as they have to find out exactly what it is, as Martha wakes up and infects the doctors. We then go back to Hal as he says that no one can stop them, as they need to spread the word of Unity. So as Supergirl goes to check back on Martha, we see the doctors are infected as well as they attack Supergirl. She almost gets completely tangled up in tentacles as Superman comes and saves her. They stop them all as after using their laser vision, the tentacles melt. So now with the knowledge that the lasers will stop the alien, they go to confront Unity and Hal. As Superman confronts Hal, he transforms into an alien creature as the original creature grows and starts to move. They try to use their laser vision, but it doesn't work. They then manage to defeat it by using gas tanks and making them explode, and as they defeat the alien, everyone goes back to normal. The episode ends with Kara as she's getting ready to go see Owen and tells her parents what happened to them. Another episode that really isn't anything special. I've really noticed that a lot of the episodes in this show are just alright episodes and that there isn't really much to say about them, but I'll get into that at the end of the show. It's a cool idea to have an alien take over a whole town, but I reckon it would honestly be better if the stakes were higher and Metropolis got infected instead, where more people like Clark and Kara love turn into zombies such as Jimmy and Lewis. Goes above a fish story, but below where's the smoke. We start this episode off with Lewis and Clark at a tribal arts exhibition, as the train's been hijacked as thieves come in and steal artifacts on the train before they arrive at the exhibition. We see that it's Talia al Ghul in the League of Shadows robbing the train, as Superman easily stops them, but as he's about to stop Talia, she blows up a bridge that the train's heading towards, so now Superman has to save the train as she gets away. He does so as Batman manages to come out and flip the switch to make the train go on the other track, avoiding the hole in the bridge. Batman explains to Superman that this is the work of Ra's al Ghul, and that he's more dangerous than the Joker and Lex combined. Superman ends up helping Batman out to find out what he's actually up to. Right after that, Lewis gets kidnapped from Talia and gets put onto a giant clock, but as Superman comes in to save her, it's actually Talia dressed up as her. They end up talking as she says that her father Ra's wants to talk to him. She then ends up using the stuff she stole to overpower Superman, where she takes him to Ra's. Superman's in chains as he sees Ra's, as he's basically an old corpse in a wheelchair as he's close to dying from old age. He explains that he basically used the Lazarus pits to make himself young again, but the more he used it, the less amount of time it would last. So he then says that he wants Superman's strength. We then see Lewis as she wakes up from being knocked out as Batman comes to see her. She explains what happened as he connects the dots to realize that Talia disguised herself as Lewis to get Superman's attention. As Batman's investigating, Lewis talks about having second thoughts about dating him again, but he's already gone. Back at the Batcave, Alfred talks to Batman to tell him the analysis on something he found while investigating Lewis's room, as it gives him the location to the League of Shadows. He then breaks in and takes on the League, and as he manages to take out a few men, the place goes up in flames, but Batman manages to question one of the members to find out where Ra's is. We then see Superman with Ra's, and as they're talking to him, a device will transfer Superman's power to Ra's. But Superman breaks out, and as he takes out almost everyone, Talia uses the staff against Superman to stop him. Ra's actually dies whilst this is still going on, but they try to give Ra's Superman's power anyways by using the staff to transfer it to him. It seems to work as Ra's de-ages, and seems to grow more and more as he wants to take all of Superman's strength. But Batman comes in to stop them just before Ra's gets all of Superman's power. He fights Ra's for a bit, but Superman wakes up and destroys half the staff as the whole place is collapsing. Ra's and Talia fall into the water below as Superman and Batman escape. It ends with Superman talking to Batman about how Superman uses his head to beat them instead of being able to just beat them with his strength. This is still a good episode, but it's the weakest episode with Batman in it. I've said in my Batman the Animated Series video, but Ra's is just a weak character in this universe, and I've never really liked his character as I found it quite boring and predictable. But seeing Batman and Superman in an episode together again is great as usual. Goes above Little Big Head Man, but below Nighttime. So we're finishing this show with a two-parter. Interesting, but I'm keen. So we start with an invasion on a planet as Darkseid's army gets into the king's castle. We then see a figure use his laser vision to break into the castle and take everyone down. The costume of this character is honestly really cool, but he gets to the king where he gives up his throne. But we see the costume character go to Darkseid, where it's revealed to be Superman as he thinks that Darkseid's his father. Darkseid's happy with Kal-El's efforts as he managed to take over the planet, and as a reward he gives him the planet Earth. So we go to Earth where Superman's flying and we see Clark with Lewis, but we see that it's Supergirl controlling a robot version of Clark as she can't keep it up for much longer. Kal-El arrives on Apokolips where he sees visions of Jimmy, Lewis and his parents, and even Superman, but we realise that it's just a nightmare. He then goes to Granny to get rid of the nightmares, where Granny says a new backstory for him where he landed on Apokolips instead of Earth, where Darkseid was a father figure to him instead. Kara's controlling a robot version of Superman as it manages to go haywire, so now she has to suit up and stop the robot. They end up at LexCorp where Lex knows that Supergirl's controlling a robot version of Superman as he was always suspicious about Superman's recent activity. He knows that he's missing and he thinks that he isn't coming back, but Supergirl leaves. We then go to Apokolips where Kal-El has his troops ready, where Darkseid gives him a flag of the Superman logo to use when he wins, but we then see Earth getting attacked as they wipe out the military. Lex talks to the general while the general finally believes him that Superman can't be trusted, so they're gonna go attack him, as Lex now has the perfect time to attack him without getting in trouble. Kal-El attacks another military base where Lewis and Jimmy are reporting as Lewis decides to go in and try and raise him with Superman. As that's going on, Supergirl tries to talk to Kal-El while they then start to fight. We see the military with Lex as he gives the general a kryptonite shooting weapon as Lewis goes to Kal-El just before he kills Supergirl. The military shoot the weapon at Superman as Lewis is talking to him, but that's how the episode ends. It's a really cool idea to see a what if scenario where Superman became Darkseid's son, and I'm definitely interested to see how this all ends. Goes above the Demon Reborn but below Nighttime. the last episode of the show and the second part. We pick up right from where we left off as Lois finds Superman and Supergirl being taken by the military. We then get a flashback where Superman's out in space as he gets captured by Granny. This is where we see that Granny mind controls him, but now Superman's in a military prison as he gets tried for his crimes. As he's being tried, Lois puts on a disguise to break into the military base. She gets in as Superman's being taken back to his cell as the General talks to Lex, where he shows the General the kryptonite needles that will permanently deal with them. They then walk into the Superman's cell with a needle as Superman tries to fight them, and then Lois catches up to help knock Lex and the General out. They escape the cell but aren't leaving until they get Supergirl. They manage to get her, but she gets shot in a weak state, so they try and rush her out so she can get her strength back. She's taken to Star Labs where they tell Superman that they can't do anything, but the professor's shit scared of Superman. After that, Superman uses a boom tube to go to Apokolips to put an end to Darkseid. He arrives as he quickly goes to the castle. He first goes to Granny where he manages to put her in the device that changed his memories, and then fights the female Furies and quickly deals with them. He goes to Darkseid as he kicks the shit out of Calibac, and then he fights Darkseid and he gets his ass handed to him until Superman uses Darkseid's mega beams against himself by blocking his eyes so it blows up in his face. The whole castle gets blown up, but Darkseid's still standing. He walks over to Superman but then just falls onto the ground as Superman picks him up and throws Darkseid's body off the top of the castle. The slaves then help Darkseid by making him get away as Superman shows up and tells Superman to go home. We then end the episode with Superman and Lois on the top of the Daily Planet where she kisses him and says that he can win everyone over one at a time. Fuck yeah, this episode's even better than the first part. Honestly, what a way to end the show with Superman defeating Darkseid. It's satisfying after seeing all the different times that Superman has fought Darkseid and lost to see him finally beat him at the end. It is very satisfying. The episode goes at the top. This season is very similar to the other two, where there are some really good episodes, but also some extremely forgettable ones. I'm just glad that the two-parter that finished the show ended on such a high note, as it really puts a good taste in your mouth. So I've now finished Superman the Animated Series. I will still say that I'm glad that I went back and watched the show again, because this show is overlooked. Not that many people talk about it anymore. Rewatching the whole show again, you definitely see that it's very mixed overall. Sometimes you have some really good episodes, and sometimes you just get some extremely forgettable ones that you don't remember for longer than a minute after watching them. None of the episodes are downright terrible, but they go from about a 3 or 4 out of 10 up to like a 10 out of 10. So you know what? Let's rank every single episode of this show, starting off with The Promethean, My Girl, Tools of the Trade, New Kids in Town, Monkey Fun, Last Son of Krypton Part 1, Livewire, Absolute Power, Fish Story, Double Dose, Unity, Two's a Crowd, Where There's Smoke, Feeding Time, Prototype, Bizarro's World, Little Girl Lost Part 1, Action Figures, Last Son of Krypton Part 2, Fun and Games, Little Piece of Home, Target, The Hand of Fate, Father's Day, Solar Power, Little Girl Lost Part 2, Last Son of Krypton Part 3, Warrior Queen, Identity Crisis, Heavy Metal, Superman's Pal, The Way of All Flesh, Blast from the Past Part 1, Blast from the Past Part 2, The Main Man Part 2, Obsession, Ghost in the Machine, In Brightest Day, Little Big Head Man, Stolen Memories, The Late Mr. Kent, The Demon Reborn, Apokolips Now Part 1, Speed Demons, The Main Man Part 1, Mix as Pixelated, Brave New Metropolis, Legacy Part 1, Nighttime, Legacy Part 2, Apokolips Now Part 2, World's Finest Part 2, World's Finest Part 3, and then finally at the top, World's Finest Part 1. I was excited to see where things went for the show after the 3-parter that started the show, but after that it took a while until we got a really good episode in the show. All of them were just consistently good or average until we got the Main Man 2-parter series. That's where it started to get really good. The show honestly picks up a lot in the second season with the World's Finest trilogy and the Apokolips Now 2-parter. Even then, there are some episodes that are just stinkers, like The Promethean, which was by far the most boring episode to watch in the whole show. The most notable thing in this show, in my opinion, is its visual style. Bruce Timm obviously took inspiration from the Fleischer cartoons from the 40s to create his Superman's look, but the one that really inspired Superman's look was the 1963 show called The Mighty Hercules. Look at them side by side, they look the fucking same. Of course the art style is great since it already was in Batman the Animated Series, and this show is the opposite of that where it isn't dark and moody but still looks fantastic. The voice cast is honestly perfect, especially Clancy Brown as Lex. When I think of Lex Luthor and how he sounds, that's the voice I think of in a similar vein to Kevin Conroy as Batman and Mark Hamill as the Joker. But now I need some time to rest since this video has taken me way too long to make, and hell, if this video does as well as the Batman the Animated Series video, I will be covering the next show in the DC Animated Universe. Alright, thank you all so much for watching this video. If you stuck around to hear this, my Batman the Animated Series video all of a sudden, after being up for about 9 to 10 months, just started doing numbers, and it really motivated me to make another video like it, but about Superman the Animated Series. I really enjoyed making that video, and I even enjoyed making this video, but unfortunately I've had much less time in my days to work on this video compared to my Batman the Animated Series video, where I wasn't working a full-time job when making that video. Since I'm working a full-time job at the moment, this takes me much longer to do, but hey, if YouTube really works out, hopefully I can do this full-time instead, as it's always been a dream of mine, and if you want to see it happen, please make sure to like the video, subscribe, even comment your thoughts on the video. I'd appreciate that a lot. It's always the simple things like that that always help get my videos recommended on YouTube, and which potentially grows my audience as well. But anyways, I'll see you on the next video.